Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Call this meeting to order as we have quorum. We acknowledge that we are meeting today on the traditional territory of Mississauga of the New Credit First Nation, the Hu-Nanashi, the Huron-Wendat, and the home of many diverse Indigenous peoples. Are there any declarations of interest at this time? Councillor Ford?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am declaring an interest in item EY 28.24. I just don't have the title of it. If you can give me 1 second, I'll read it out for members of the public.
It's lane designation Roy York Road, a private driveway access to Humbertown Shopping Centre north of Strath Humber Court.
And I own a property in the immediate area.
Okay, duly noted. Any other further declarations? Seeing none, I'll now take a motion to, I'll take a motion to confirm the minutes from January 16th, 2018. Moved by Councillor Campbell. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Are there any petitions at this time? Councillor DeChano.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a petition for item number EY 28.22, and this is petition from all the business owners and their employees with respect to their concerns to have a traffic light installed at North Queen and Vanscoy. So I'll submit that for you. Thank you.
Okay, duly noted. Councillor Campbell, point of order. Petition, Councillor Campbell.
Yes, I have a petition from residents in the Richmond Gardens neighborhood. It's we, the undersigned
What's
residents.
the item number, Councillor Campbell, sorry?
Item, hang on 1 second, 28, let me see. Is it 26? 1 second.
29.
29? 2829, thank you. 2829 on
Can
the
you read out the title?
Traffic concerns Richmond Gardens.
traffic concerns Richmond Gardens, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a number of
Councillor
items on
Holiday.
the agenda. Wasn't
Thank you,
quite
Deputy
sure
Mayor
which one
Holiday.
it was. So if I could just, we, the undersigned residents of Richmond Gardens, support the implementation of all-way stop signs along Wincott Drive between Eglington West and the Westway. The 3 locations under consideration are at Strathie, Hartsdale, and Sheffley Crescent, and I have a petition with 66 signatures. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Holiday. Appreciate your help on that one. Councillor Palacio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 2 petitions. The first one is EY 28.12 in support of front
Sorry,
yard parking
Councillor Palacio, could you
application.
read out 2012, what it is?
28.12 in support of the front yard parking application at 358 Bartlett Avenue with 24 names.
24 names, thank you.
The second one is item EY 28.39 with 31 names, and the application and the petition reads: with the undersigned residents of Glenhurst Avenue between Winona Drive to the point west of Appleton Avenue are kindly requesting that our street be ceremoniously named Beaming Ridge Avenue with
Okay.
31 names.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's 4, Mayor Rosemary, right? 4? Any other further petitions at this time? Seeing none, we'll now go through the items, and I remind people our clock is not working again today, so it'll be timed at the back. Okay, EY 28.1, proposed park in Emery Village, update on Hydro 1 negotiations, hold for speakers at 9:45. 28.2, final report 784, the Queensway zoning bylaw amendment application, hold for speakers at 10. 28.3, draft plan of standard condominium application 2522, 2542 Keele Street, request for direction report, speakers at 10. 28.4, preliminary report 5365 Dundas Street West zoning bylaw amendment application, Councillor DeChano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to increase the meeting notice notification area 250 meters at the expense of the applicant.
Okay, so Councillor DeChano's increasing the notification area on number 2 to, sorry, how many meters?
250 meters, and make it at the expense of the applicant, please.
That was very good. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 28.5, preliminary report 2370 Finch Avenue West, official plan and zoning bylaw amendment application. We have speakers. Is that time, Rosemary? There's no time? Are there any speakers on 2370 Finch Avenue West, official plan and zoning bylaw amendment? There are speakers? I have my list, no? Okay, we'll hold that down for speakers.
Islington Park.
Ah, there we go. Okay. 28.6, preliminary report 1243 Islington Avenue zoning bylaw amendment application. Counselor DeChano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Once again, I'd like to increase the meeting notice area, notification area, 250 meters at the expense of the applicant.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 28.7, preliminary report 1978 to 2002 Lakeshore Boulevard West zoning bylaw amendment application. Counselor Doucette.
I'm going to be making an amendment, and we're going to be expanding the notification area. I am attaching a map. I will be handing it in. This is the lake, so everything's just going north. We're using, going further north, as I say, and I've already given this into planning at the expense of the proponent.
All right, good. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 28.8, preliminary report 2-4 Medona Road official plan and zoning bylaw amendment application. Counselor DeChano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to adopt staff recs, but also increase the notification area 250 meters at the expense of the applicant.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 28.9, intention designated under Part 1V, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, 2896 Dundas Street West. We have speakers at 10:30. 2810, residential demolition application 532 Jane Street. Councillor Doucette.
I'm going to be supporting option 2 to allow the demolition of this existing one-story building. It's basically got a hole going into the basement. It is dangerous.
Okay, Councillor Doucette's moving recommendation number 2. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 2811, residential demolition application 1225 the Queensway. Councillor DeChano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to adopt staff recommendation number 2 on this.
Councillor DeChano's moving recommendation number 2. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 2812, front yard parking appeal 358 Bartlett Avenue North. We have speakers at 11. 2813, front yard parking appeal 349 Windermere Avenue. Speakers at 11. 2814, application for fence exemption 34 Renown Road. Speakers at 11:30. Application 15, application for fence exemption 306A Kane Avenue. We have speakers 11:30. 2816, application for fence exemption 306B Kane Avenue. Speakers at 11:30. 2817, application for fence exemption 308A Kane Avenue. Speakers 11:30. 2818, application for fence exemption 11 George Brownlee Court. Speakers 11:45. 19, application for fence exemption 9 Norcrest Drive. Speakers 11:45. 2820, application for fence exemption 143 Rennell Crescent. Speakers 11:45. 2821, application for fence exemption 9 Rex Gate. We have speakers 11:45. 2822, traffic control signals North Queen Street and Vansco Road. We have speakers at noon. EY 28.23, traffic control signal Walsh Avenue, Matthews Gate. Councillor Mamalidi.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move staff recommendations on that.
Councillor Mamalidi moves the staff recommendations. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 2824, lane designation Roy Ark Road, private driveway access to Humbertown Shopping Centre north of Humber Court. Recognizing Councillor Ford has a conflict, but that we have speakers at 10:45. So Councillor Ford, you can stay where you are. 2825, U-turn prohibition Rexdale Boulevard and Humberwood Boulevard. Councillor Ford.
Mr. Chair, I'll move staff recommendations.
Councillor Ford moves the staff recommendations. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 2826, parking amendments, U-turn prohibition, Saskatoon Drive, Benbow Road. Councillor Campbell.
Move the staff recommendations, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Campbell moves the staff recommendations. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 2827, school bus loading zone parking regulation amendments, Queens Drive. Councillor DeGiorgio. 2827.
To approve, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor moves the staff recommendations. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 2828, school bus loading zone parking regulation amendment, Strathburn Boulevard. Councillor Mamalidi.
I'll move staff recommendations.
Councillor Mamalidi moves the staff recommendations. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 2829, traffic concerns Richview Gardens. Councillor Campbell.
Going to hold that down, Mr. Chair.
Gonna hold. 2830, speed limit reduction, Clearbrook Circle. Counselor Ford.
I'll move staff recommendations, Mr.
Counselor
Chair.
Ford moves the staff recommendations. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 2831, parking regulation amendment, Beaumonde Heights Drive. Counselor Crisanti's not here. Counselor Nunziata, could you move that on?
Yes, I'll move the staff recommendation.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 2832, parking regulation amendment, Dwight Avenue. Counselor Nunziata, can you move that recommendation for me, please?
Yes, I'll move the recommendation.
Counselor Nunziata moves the recommendation. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 2833, parking regulation amendment, Ridge Valley Crescent. Counselor Campbell.
Mr. Chair, I move the staff recommendation.
Counselor Campbell moves the staff recommendations. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 2834, installation of on-street accessible parking spaces, Etobicoke York District, January 2018, non-delegated. Counselor Palacio.
I would like to adopt the staff recommendations.
Counselor Palacio moves the staff recommendations. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 2835, installation removal of on-street accessible parking spaces, Etobicoke York District, January 2018, delegated, in wards 11, 12, 13, and 17. Counselor DeGiorgio. Counselor George moves the recommendations. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 2836, traffic calming poll results, King George's Drive between Keele Street and Trethewey Drive. Counselor DeGiorgio.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to defer this item for another cycle. I still have to.
Counselor George will move deferral to next day. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 2837, traffic calming Bywood Drive between Kipling Avenue and Islington Avenue. Counselor Campbell.
Move the staff recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Counselor Campbell moves the staff recommendations. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 2838, St. Clair Gardens Business Improvement Area Proactive Enforcement Measures. Counselor Palacio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to move a set of recommendations that are with the clerk. And those recommendations have, those recommendations were done in conjunction with city staff from municipal licensing standards. So it's asking for a report to come back on April the 4th
This is this report to come back?
with those recommendations.
Okay, is everybody okay with that?
Just a report in a meeting.
Yep. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 2839, assigning a ceremonial name Vimy Ridge Way to Glenhurst Avenue. Counselor Palacio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move the staff's recommendations and a huge thank you to city staff overall, but mainly Toronto Economic Development.
Okay. Counselor Palacio's moving the staff recommendation. Thanks to staff. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 2840, request for transportation study or traffic management on Morrison Street. Counselor Nunziata, can you move that on my behalf, please?
Yes, I'll move the recommendation.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 2841, request to strengthen tree protection enforcement in Long Branch. That's mine. Counselor Nunziata, do you mind moving that for me, please?
So I'll move the recommendation.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Appointments to business improvement areas, boards of management, wards 5, 13, and 17. Counselor Doucette's moving the recommendations. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 2843, endorsement of events for liquor license purposes in wards 3, 13, 17. Deputy Mayor Holliday.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the Community Council, I'd like to move that we endorse the events listed for liquor licensing purposes.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. Are there any other added starters?
Point of privilege, Mr. Chairman.
1 second, Councillor Mamady, please. Is there any added starters? No? That's it? Councillor Mamady, point of order?
Point of privilege, Mr.
Point of
Chairman.
privilege?
And I'm speaking on behalf of myself being a councillor, a part of this community council, part of council. It's with great regret that I have to make these comments through this forum, but it just seems to me that when we go through a process that's driven by staff at a planning stage in our communities, and when that process clearly indicates that communities are not satisfied or are satisfied with a particular application, staff write reports and bring them to Community Council. Community Council, after listening to the dialogue that's in front of us, agrees with everything that the community is saying. It just seems that after council itself votes in favor of the bills necessary to move a particular application forward. It just seems to me that every time that a community or a local councillor object to what planning staff have to say through motions, that there seems to be an effort to try to undermine and try to fight the local communities on these issues. I don't know where that's driven, Mr. Chairman, but there's a pattern going on that I'm not happy with. And it just seems that every time that we as councillors object to planners, there seems to be a fight that continues on at council. When I got elected and when I entered political office, my job was to represent communities. In an application recently in my ward, which was driven by staff, the whole process was driven by staff, the community was asked through a vote whether or not they approved the existing application at the end of the day, and they said yes because it was the best application possible. It did not meet the DIPS policy, so staff had to object. But it took a turn at council after council unanimously voted in favor of rezoning and drafting up the bills. Someone in their wisdom at the last minute decided to talk to a councillor or two and try to reverse council's position on the bills itself, and they did. It was a routine matter. I wasn't present because it was a routine matter. And now we are faced with us as a team trying to represent Etobicoke, whether or not we should just approve whatever staff says. And what I listened to at the council meeting the other day were councillors saying, well, we've never really objected to whatever staff says. Is that what we're here for, Mr. Chairman? Are we here specifically to rubber stamp anything that staff have to say? Because if we are, we may as well just give the reins over to staff and let them run the city. My objection today, and my point of privilege, is that staff have got to stop the fighting with councillors. Because communities don't agree with staff at times, it doesn't mean you can just willy-nilly decide to overturn everything in my opinion, in an underhanded way. And my community now is faced probably with an OMB decision after council unanimously asked for the bills to be drafted up and brought back to council. Are we here, Mr. Chairman? I'm asking you a question. Are we here specifically to rubber stamp whatever staff says? Because if we are, why are we here? What's the point? Why do we have to vote if it's just what staff says that determines at the end of the day what happens? Does community council not have any rights? Does community council not have any ability on its own to make decisions on its own without repercussions at council? Do communities have to be embarrassed because they're objecting to what staff are suggesting? Staff in my community ran the process and negotiated with the community. Staff did it. And at council, we heard completely different from staff after a question from one of the councillors said, I've never seen this process happen the way it has. Well, you ran the damn process. You ran the damn process, not me, not the local councillor. So my objection and question to you is, does staff determine at the end of the day what has to be passed? And should we just give up and say whatever they want, they get? And I'd like an answer to that question on record, because I'm sick and tired of the planning staff doing this to us every single turn they take.
A point of personal privilege. I think I would like the councillor to, it's unfair for councillors to attack staff when they have no opportunity to retort and reply.
I'd like to hear that.
So,
I'd like to hear that retort and reply.
Let me just finish. So this is not the forum for that discussion to take place. This is not a court where we levy allegations against staff, and they don't have an opportunity to reply. I think, Counselor, your objection should be to the process that took place at council, where one of the councillors basically took the position that that councillor was going to get the rest of city council to go against the wishes of community council.
No. Mr. Chairman.
But my point is that this is not the forum
It is.
for us to be attacking staff when they have no opportunity to provide a
Okay.
rebuttal.
Mr. Chairman, to clarify, my question to you is, should we be just approving willy-nilly what staff recommend to us? Because that's what I heard at council. I heard that whatever staff says goes. And if it's what staff says that goes, then let us know now, because there's no point in taking the communities through this process, giving them a hope that they've had something to say about an application, going forward and voting for an application, unanimously going to council and asking for the bills to be passed after that process, and then someone stands up, and staff stood up and said, I've never seen this process, after a question from one of the councillors. So my question is, and I'm seeing this all the time now here, and I know I'm speaking for many of you because we talk, okay? So the question is, what do we do about it? Do we just sit back and just rubber stamp whatever staff says? I disagree with that. And this is the forum to do it in a point of privilege, because you agreed. You heard people come here and depute. You heard the circumstances and you voted unanimously to support that application. And it's happening regularly here. It's a routine now. We're planners. I'm sorry if I offend anybody, but I'm sick of it. Planners are fighting back in their own way, in my opinion. And so my question is, should we be voting on applications if we disagree with planners?
So, Councillor Mamley, of course, staff brings its best advice to us, and we make the final decision. That being said, this community council, I know the one you're talking about, went to council. Council is supreme down when it goes to Toronto Council. That's where it gets voted on at the end, and that's where the decision gets made. So that's maybe a point of privilege you have down at Toronto City Council, but again, we make the decision here. It goes to Toronto City Council, and they are the final deciding down there on any item. So I think your point of personal privilege would happen down there, but if you're asking me, no, we are here to make decisions. Staff bring their best recommendations forward to us, and we decide what we're going to do with it. But then, in that case, that when you're talking about, that planning application went down to Toronto City Council, and they are supreme. They make the final decision on.
I understand that.
So
My point of privilege is on behalf of community council as well.
So I would suggest you bring that point
And
of
my question to you as community council, what rights do we have as councillors in this forum? Should we just approve everything that staff say? Is that the direction that we're taking?
Councillor Mamley, I've answered that, but that's probably a process question, and I agree with you on some things should not be decided down at Toronto City Council. Some of these applications should be decided here, and they should end here, but that's a process that I don't control. We all control that, and that should be maybe brought up downtown. Okay, so moving right along to our first item, 28.1, proposed park in Emery Village, update on Hydro One negotiations. Do we have any speakers? Any speakers on park at Emery Village? Councillor Mamalidi?
I've got questions of staff. And they said they would be here last meeting. That would be the staff that are looking at the road, the potential road.
Just 1 second.
Morning.
Okay. So, sorry, just so we know who you are.
Richard Beck, I'm with Transportation Planning and working with Transportation Services with regards to the development of the Transportation Master Plan that was prepared for the Emery Village area.
Okay. Just the first question. There's a master plan, a transportation master plan, right?
That's correct.
That calls for a road to go through a hydro corridor?
That's correct, and it was also identified in the secondary plan for
Right.
Emery Village.
And in this particular case, that's really the main issue is whether or not we could put an Aboriginal park in a place where we've determined should be a road in the future.
There were concerns that the City Planning Transportation Services expressed with regards to the park, so we've engaged Hydro One with regards to discussions about a linear park within their corridor.
Okay.
As the councillor knows, Hydro One has come back and said they will not entertain a linear park within the hydro corridor. So we've indicated from a staff.
Hydro has said they're not going to entertain a park or a road? A road, not the park.
Linear road, not, I
I-
haven't been involved in discussions with the park. I'm talking specifically about the road.
Okay, but Hydro, I think one of your colleagues has been a part of the discussions with Hydro, right?
Yes, Ed
And-
Preston
and-
from Transportation Services.
And they have no issues with a park underneath the Hydro?
I haven't been involved in those discussions. It's Parks and Forest.
I'll ask Parks that question in a couple of minutes. It's the road that seems to be the issue. Now, the last time we spoke, which was after we deferred this last meeting,
Right.
you had given an indication that in fact, we could temporarily work an equation out with a park, even though there's a master plan for the future on a road, until any amendments are made to that master plan.
Correct. I mean, the road is a line on a map right now. There's further environmental assessment work that is required to implement that road, taking in consideration, obviously, existing land uses and change in policies from Hydro. We have to look at that and determine if our alternatives exist moving forward. There's no funding for the road at this time. It's a long-term proposal, so we're of the opinion that we'd let the park proceed without holding it up by the road.
Right, so you have no objections to us making a decision to put a park there?
No.
Even though there's a road that Hydro doesn't want to go through and have said no to?
Right.
In the future?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, so it's just really an amendment to the master plan eventually that we need to make?
If we have to make an amendment, we're done probably in the future when we're going to move forward with the implementation of that road. What the
Okay.
trigger for that road is, we don't know at this time. I mean,
Okay.
right now, it's just a line on a map. It doesn't say it has to be in the hydro corridor. There are alternative alignments that we'd have to
So
explore.
Transportation has no objection to the park being designated under the hydro corridor?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you. Can I ask Parks some questions? Hi. Thank you. Do you object to the park being put under the hydro corridor?
No, we've had discussions with Hydro One, and our director was satisfied with the conclusion, which was that the park could move ahead as long as the road wasn't an issue.
Okay. There's a letter in front of us from a member of the community that suggests that the hydro corridor is bad for this use. Do we have other parks, other soccer fields, other recreational space under other hydro corridors in the city?
We do. We have some soccer fields. We also have some dog off leash areas underneath the hydro corridors. We're cognizant of the ability to keep the parks in areas that have a lower exposure to the emissions, but we don't have any concerns. But further testing would be required, and we've discussed that with the BIA, and we will proceed with that.
Would you agree with me that this corridor made a very significant role in history with respect to the 3 Aboriginal groups that occupied the territory back then?
Yes, so the BIA has shown us proof of that, and so we think that the design's great from what they've brought forward so far, and we're supportive.
And this design isn't going to cost the taxpayers anything, is it?
No, it's going to come from the surrounding development, is my understanding. So we'll have to wait just because that application is at the OMB, but it won't come out of our budget. No.
Right. And let's talk about that. There's been some applications in the community. There's been some money allocated to this particular project.
Yes, there has.
And how much is that?
We won't know. It would actually be planning that might have a better idea than us, but that will be determined further on in the process. So once it's being approved by the OMB or whatever process it continues at, when they come in for their first above grade building permit, the assessment will be done on what their cash in lieu value will be, and that can be applied to the park.
So Parks has no issues putting the Aboriginal park in this corridor?
No, we don't.
Can I talk to Hydro for a second? Or sorry, planning? Oh, okay. Sorry, I just want to make sure everybody, all the Ts are crossed and the Is are dotted. And we'll wait for council to overturn this project too. Planning, How much money is allocated for this project through, what is it, Section 37 or?
So through the medallion proposal for the Phase 2, we had $1 million of Section 37 money was going to be put aside for the park.
How much?
$1 million.
There's $1 million for this.
Yeah.
Can I just jump in for a quick second, Counselor? We did take a look at the other Section 37 commitments in the area. Phase 1 of Medallion also has $400,000 set aside for local park improvements, which could go towards the Aboriginal Park. There's also another Section 37 commitment in the area for local parks improvement. Roughly speaking, all told, there are Section 37 commitments that, if it was the will of the local councillor, could be targeted towards the Aboriginal Park, and they run to about $2 million. We should also recognize that the council, when the Phase 2 medallion went down there for the recommendation to approve it at the board, also directed that all of the Section 42 charges go towards this local park as well.
So my point was, we're not looking at the city funding this thing, right? There's enough money to get it started right now, right?
Well, as I said, Councillor, we have in the ballpark of about $2 million in Section 37 funds for local parkland improvements, plus all of the Section 42 funds would be targeted at that park.
Last question, and I know that, but again, Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure
I got you. There's 7 minutes, so last question. Allow it second round.
Thank you. Now that we know we can build something with no objections from transportation here, what is the next step? What do I need to do today to ensure that we're progressing in this particular way? Is there another report that needs to come forward? Can someone answer that question?
My understanding from reading the report, and this is a parks report, is that negotiation with Hydro One need to be concluded. So I would guess that that would be what needs to happen.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Nunziata, then Councillor Doucette.
It's just a question to Parks. Yeah, it's just one question, because I have a lot of hydro corridors in my ward too, that are parks. So it's my understanding from the parks that I have in the hydro corridor, that there's a lease that the city signs with Hydro for the use of the corridor. Is that still in place? Because I know it was years ago, the ones I have in my ward. Is that the case here too?
Yes, so our business services department deals with the master lease, and this would be added to it.
So it's sort of like $1 a year, sort of.
Yes, it's
right?
phenomenal.
Hydro, yeah. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Doucette, the question?
You might be able to answer my questions, so stay with us. On page 3 of the report, it talks about the electric and magnetic field study.
Yep.
Has that study been completed, and who's actually doing it?
No, so that will be part of the submissions that we'll work with the BIA group. So that plus environmental testing will need to take place before everything is done. But that will be part of our negotiations with Hydro.
And because this is going to be working around with the First Nations group, has this proposal actually gone to the Aboriginal Advisory Committee down at City Hall?
No, as the group is just getting formed while we were doing this report. It will once the design is set, but there's some tweaking that Hydro One's asked for in the design, and once we have a design further finalized, we'll move forward with that.
And I just want to confirm, because in the report it has some reservations about the proposed playground. I know Councillor Nunziata and others do actually have off-leash and playgrounds under hydro corridors. Is that correct?
Yes, and the applicant actually has made some changes to their application to show non-metal play equipment, which we would be more supportive of.
Definitely. I know we're hearing, and in the letter from the BIA, it says that Hydro One has said that they don't propose putting a road through, and we're hearing from Transportation that they are okay not putting a road through. I think I'm correct. If a road did go through, what decade would that happen in? Is it something like the waterfront master plan, where maybe when we're all gone and buried, they might change Lakeshore?
That one I would have to ask transportation.
I guess my
about.
point is, it's worth putting in a park now, and if at some point in time someone says you need a road, then it may possibly happen, or will we actually get agreement saying there will never be a road going through here? I'm sorry, I'm asking lots of
No,
questions
it's
of
okay.
different people.
Sorry, prior to any road going through, we'd have to complete the environmental assessment process. So that would take into account the existing conditions. So if the park is already there, we have to account for that. We have to conform to Hydro One policies as well. So if they dictate that we have to be outside the hydro corridor, we have to look at alternative alignments. In terms of when a road would happen, as I indicated before, there is no funding currently in place for a road. So the likely trigger for something of this magnitude to happen, because it involves grade separations and that, would probably be related to Metrolinx doing GO service on the Bolton corridor, which they currently do not serve, and there is no intention for Metrolinx right at this time to service the Bolton corridor. So it's quite a ways off in the future.
Okay, so we don't have to really worry about that in our lifetime, probably. And we're living a long, long time.
It's going to be a while. Yeah.
My last question, I don't know if you can answer this. All these studies which are being done, who's paying for all these studies?
Sorry, the studies
So on
for
page 4, you've got your EMF, you've got archaeological studies, you've got ground studies, other environmental assessments. Who pays for all those studies?
I'd have to defer back to
Sorry.
parks. I mean, the city would be paying for the road environmental assessment when that's initiated in the future, but
If that
the
happened.
other
But
studies,
right now, who's
yeah,
paying for these studies to make sure that this can become a park?
I'll defer to parks on that.
Because it's a community-led initiative.
It is a community-led initiative. We know that we still need to have conversations with the BIA group about how the construction will happen and how the environmental works and the EMF studies will have to happen. So right now we don't have a solid answer, but we'll be working with the BIA groups to get all of that resolved now that we know what's going to happen with the road.
Will the BIA also be responsible for all the working drawings and
They've already produced
the
them.
master plan and all that? They've got all the working drawings
Yeah.
then? They've paid for everything
Yes.
now? Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Councillor Palacio?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's, this is a follow-up to Councillor Doucet's questions in terms of hydropolis, city police, as it relates to environmental assessments that have to be done, phase 1 or phase 2, or archaeological studies.
Yep.
Now, my question to you is in terms of not only payment, but in terms of agreements. Now, it is very difficult for the city to get into hydro lands to conduct any studies in the absence of any permits, because the lands are not on the hands of the city. So what's the process in terms, here we have with the Emery Village, in terms of the hydro one negotiations, what's the process that you are using there that differs in other parts of the city? And then I'll relate to my second question.
So we'll still need to meet with Hydro One again now that we have a decision on the road. And at that meeting, we'll be discussing how to proceed with the environmental, the archaeological, and the EMF studies. So at that time, we'll have to discuss with them what the process that they need from both us and the BIA to move forward with those studies.
So in the interim, is there a process? Is there some sort of permission that for the city to walk in and to do those studies?
I believe
Or Hydro is doing on their own?
No, we would need to do the studies, so or us or the BIA group, meaning the city and the BIA together. So the Hydro One is not going to do the studies for us. So we would need to get permits or some sort of permissions from Hydro One to be on the lands to do those assessments.
I do have community-led initiatives in my ward, Ward 17, within the hydrolands, and that's to create a green line that crosses the ward, not only within 17, but Councillor Nunciara's 11, and Councillor Mihevic's to the east, that's 21, so all across. Those studies and those requests have been there for over 12 years with resolutions passed by City Council asking, actually prioritizing that. Why is taking so long? And I'm very envious, and actually I applaud the process that we're going through for this Emery Village, because things are moving so fast there, and that's fantastic. Why is it that in other parts of the city it's not happening the same? I don't know if you have that.
Councillor Palacio, it's probably not a fair question. This is another project, so probably not a fair
No, I'm asking just in terms of process, because I think that's the process is a good process that you're using. And I would like, and I think other members of council would like to hopefully use the same process.
I'm not.
What's the magic there?
Yeah, I'm not terribly sure what the stage is that the Green Line is in terms of the negotiations with Hydro One and how the process is proceeding. Our business services takes care of that. I'm not too sure how this process is differing, other than the fact that we're reporting to council. So for this one, we are pushing forward to try to get the report back when we were required to. So I'm not too sure if that would make the difference with the Green Line or not.
If there is any sort of contamination going back to the Emery Village, and that necessitates remediation, who is in the hook for that? Who pays for it at the end? Who does the maintenance?
The maintenance is most likely going to fall on park staff, as it will be a city park. But the environmental work and such, we still have to negotiate with the BIA as to how the cost is going to be broken down.
Thanks so much.
Deputy Mayor Holiday had a question. Richard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Beck, this predates me a bit. I see that there was an approval in 2009 on a transportation master plan, and then a further approval in 2010. I think what I've learned in this process, and I'm going to set the discussion about the park aside, because let's just talk about the corridor lands. The indication of this process so far is that basically Hydro One has said, thanks for your plan, we're not supporting a roadway through the hydro corridor. So again, park aside, my bigger question is, in order to properly service the mixed-use area to the north with a transportation network, what is the plan for a road if Hydro is saying you can't put one through our corridor?
Right. I guess in 2009, when the Transportation Master Plan was done, hydro policies were different at that time.
Right.
They've changed since then. 2010 was when we implemented the secondary plan. We made the amendments to the secondary plan to bring forward the recommendations from the Transportation Master Plan. So what would happen now is, with Hydro's current position, when we've already identified the need for a new road in this connection to help relieve the Weston and Finch intersection from traffic. So we'd have to look at alternative alignments. So that may mean you push something a little bit further south into the Emery Collegiate lands, and then on the other side of the rail corridor was the old Purelator property. We did meet with Purelator during the time we did the Transportation Master Plan to have discussions with them. I believe they're no longer occupying that building. I'm not sure if somebody else is there or if it's been sold, but we'd have to look at alternative alignments that were acceptable to Hydro. And we're still trying to have those negotiations with them to see if there's opportunities for a minor encroachment within the hydro corridor, and then put the bulk of the road facilities outside or parallel to the corridor.
Okay,
So those discussions are ongoing, but as I indicated before, there's no funding in place for a road at this time.
Funding or not, it's important to me that we have some plan for the area.
Yep.
So you're confident there is an option out there, given Hydro's stance?
Yes. Yeah.
Are you confident that if there's a minor encroachment onto the hydro area, and if that's granted by Hydro, that it will jive with the plan for a park?
I think we are pretty confident that we can do something while allowing the park to go through. The park is sort of north. There's a parking area now that's associated with the Emery Collegiate. The park is sort of identified between there and the rail corridor. Right. So I think there's opportunities for us to do something. It'd be closer to the Emery Collegiate, so we'd have to have discussions obviously with the school board with respect to that, and determining the width and the actual design. Like those are the details that we didn't get into as part of the Transportation Master Plan.
Okay,
That's
and
all the next phase.
In your opinion, does the process that you have access to provide an opportunity for transportation planning and parks planning to work together to make sure that whatever the final solution is, both the interests of the transportation network and the park will have a successful outcome?
I believe there is definitely an opportunity to move forward. We've indicated we want to protect for the road in some form or fashion. We don't want to remove it from the transportation master plan because we did identify there is a value to that road.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. Seeing no further questions, Councillor Mamadou to speak.
Chairman, can I ask one more question? Just
Sure you
one
can.
more question.
Yeah, second round, all in favor, opposed, carried.
It won't take long. Just so that, I'm glad Councillor Holliday brought up what happened back then, but one of the roads that is also in the master plan is Rivalda Road, cutting over to Arrow Road, right?
That's correct.
Just south of there?
That's correct.
Would it be safe for me to say that that road could effectively take a lot of traffic from the intersection if it were built out?
That road was intended to connect employment areas on the east side of the rail corridor with the west side, and that small pocket of employment that we have on Rivalda. It doesn't have as clean a connection to Weston Road, so we won't achieve the benefits, I don't think, from this road connection that we've identified to relieving traffic from Weston and Finch.
But didn't that come from a recommendation to connect south of Shepherd into Arrow Road, and for the tractor trailers to eventually use Rivalda instead of Weston Road?
That's correct. It was intended to help relieve a lot of the truck traffic on Weston Road to give
All right.
another outlet.
So here's my other question to you. There has been an effort by the BIA to commence their own study on tractor trailer use in the community. You aware of that?
I'm not aware of that specific initiative. I do know that we are trying to initiate a goods movement study for the overall area that Transportation Services has prepared an RFP for, but whether that's tied into that, I'm not sure.
Okay, but you're aware that the BIA wanted to do their own study on tractor trailer use?
I wasn't aware of that, no.
That led to the city wanting a much larger study for the issue of Metrolinx and the LRT. It was concluded that the city would spend money along with the few BIAs that are along the Finch corridor, and everyone agreed that that study was necessary. Are you aware of that?
I'm aware of that, yes.
So tell me, what's happened with that?
As far as I understand, that an RFP has been written to retain consultants for that. It's with Transportation Services right now. I'm not sure of the status of when it's going to be issued. I've been told it's imminent, but I haven't received an update as of late.
Funny, I've been told that it was held by the mayor's office.
I haven't heard that information.
Is there any way you could find out who held it and where it's at? Because this thing was moving forward, and then all of a sudden it stopped, just like a tractor trailer would at a stoplight.
Yeah, I can definitely make inquiries and see if we can get in for.
Could you find out if the mayor's had anything to do with this too, or no?
I can ask.
All right.
Thank you.
Councillor Mamadou to speak.
There are two motions, Mr. Chairman. The first one just basically says that we're giving staff, authority to move forward with hydro and to negotiate a package and bring it back to us. Okay. And the second one asks the BIA, the Emery Village BIA, to move forward with its tractor trailer study. Mr. Chairman, what happened was they were prepared to move forward with their own tractor trailer study at their cost, and then the city interjected and said we should have a much larger one and include all the other BIAs, in which they did, and I just asked those questions. There was an effort by everyone to continue with each of the BIAs pitching in some money to help with the study, and now we're being told that that has been put on hold, and I think it's a political hold, Mr. Chairman. So I'd like the BIA to just continue with its plans so that you could see a real study through at least that corridor to talk about how to alleviate the traffic in that particular area. So that deals with the roads itself. In this particular case, Hydro has told us they're never going to approve a road under that Hydro corridor, and that they would accept a park. So it just makes sense for us to do this. We've gone through a process. The indigenous groups were here, all three of them. They all are on board with this particular project, and I think there's a letter on file too that suggests that. And I'd like to move as quickly as possible. If we're serious about, at federal level, provincial levels, we're all talking about understanding what's happened with the Indigenous groups and the Aboriginal communities in the past, to help support and recognize and make sure that everybody kind of understands what happened back then. Not only does this park do that, it calls out the history in the community, but we're also looking to give the Indigenous groups a place where they can, for the first time in this country, a place where they can actually showcase the history as they see it in this country in terms of what happened. So on this site, if it goes forward the way it should and will, I hope, we are going to showcase through their eyes the history of the Indigenous communities in this country. So we either want this thing or not. It seems that everything that Ward 7 wants to do, someone finds a way to object and to stop things from happening for some reason. But we're just going to keep plugging away and proving everybody wrong, and that's what we're going to do. That's what we do best. They can mudsling all they like. They can hold things up politically. Maybe next term we'll move forward a little better. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I'm a very stubborn man, and I'm going to continue with a plan that was created 20 years ago, and I don't care who tries to stop it.
Deputy Mayor Holliday.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wondered if the councillor could help me just understand a little bit better the link between the tractor-trailer usage in the corridor and the idea of moving forward on a park. Just why the two have been brought together. I didn't quite get it here.
Well, you saw the roads movement. I don't know if you know this, but there was a roads movement plan that included the hydro corridor as a mechanism, perhaps a mechanism to bring tractor trailers through, so that they're not interfering with the Finch and Western Road LRT line, right?
Right.
And so it includes this particular road and all the roads around it. So if you better understood through a study what's going to happen with not only tractor trailers but traffic in that area, it would make it much easier for you to approve something like this as it relates to transportation.
Just like any development proposal.
Just like any other development proposal.
A study that goes along with it so that we understand the impact to the traffic. Is there any intention to bring the traffic study before council to look at, or through planning in any way, the same way that we bring a consultant's report from a developer through? Like, how will that report ever, we're saying to the BIA that we support it, but how will it ever come back to us?
So what happened with this was that the BIA and its venture, and this BIA is a lot different than most. They typically say, we're going to pay for these studies. We're going to pay, just like they did with the LRT study and the transportation study that they paid for, that showed that the road needed to be widened along Finch Avenue. If it weren't for the BIA spending that money to show that didn't make sense for the LRT the way it did, the Metrolinx would never have agreed to expand the size of the road, right? So like they did that, they wanted to do this, right? And then when they did that, they said, we're going to do this. The city interjected and said, well, we should do a much larger one so that we properly understand all the tractor trailer needs in the northwest pocket of the city. And we'll get all the BIAs to pitch in, and the city's going to pitch in. And then everybody came together and agreed on a plan. That plan has been put on hold, okay? Now, I have my views on how it's been put on hold, but it's been put on hold. I'm suggesting, forget that then. If everything's going to be put on hold that we want to do, let the BIA do what they wanted to do so you get a better understanding of it through their own studies, right?
Thank you.
Councillor Nunziata to speak.
Just to speak briefly, I do support the motion as far as the park. I don't understand tractor trailer, but anyway, I support it anyway. But just to talk about the hydro corridor, and as it was mentioned with Councillor Palacio in his ward and my ward, we have a huge hydro corridor that goes right through our wards. And for years, this is even prior to amalgamation, we've had parks, the Parks and Recreation, we've had garden plots in our hydro corridor, we've had a playground in our hydro corridor. So it has been used as parkland for a number of years, and it's actually been very successful. So just recently, Hydro One is building a transformer in my hydro corridor that goes right through my ward, and that is to provide electricity for the Eglington line. And so through that whole process, the Hydro One has been working with the city and working with the community on doing improvements under the hydro corridor, which they would not have done if it wasn't for the project that they're working on. We have an off-leash dog park, and so there are improvements. So it seems like when Hydro One, they want the usage of the corridor to expand a transformer, they're more than happy to support any improvements under the corridor. Other than that, over the years, in my opinion, they've been very difficult to deal with under the corridor. And I know, Councillor Palazzo, you've done some work under the corridor as well. So I do support the recommendation by Councillor Mammoliti. And I don't think this comes to Toronto Council, Councillor Mammoliti, so you don't have to worry about it not being approved at Toronto Council.
Councillor Palazzo to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do support these recommendations as well, and I think this is a wonderful opportunity for that community, for the Emery village to move forward with something that's so much needed. With regards to the hydrolands overall, there are some parts of the city, for example, the areas in the former city of York and Toronto, that are parkland efficient. And these are the opportunities that creates additional green space, recreational space, either for off-leash and more green space to the community and playgrounds and so on. And that's one way of getting these lands at a very minimum cost with these lease agreements. We are not acquiring, we are not buying it. So we don't need the millions of dollars to do that. And if we do this kind of smart planning to move forward and to embrace not only what's happening and within the Hydro One lands up in the Emery village, but all throughout the city, I think we can create and bring what the city needs, what our local communities are asking for, more green space, recreational space at very little cost. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Palacio. Seeing no further speakers, Councillor Mammoliti's motions are on the screen. All in favor? Recorded vote?
Recorded vote, please.
Councillor DeGiorgio, Councillor Doucette, Councillor Palacio, Councillor Nunziata, Councillor Grimes, Deputy Mayor Holliday, Councillor DeCiano, Councillor Mammoliti, and Councillor Campbell passes unanimously.
So which, this is the motion?
Yeah. Put them together. Together? Yeah. Right, Rosemary?
Together.
Yeah, together.
No. Did you just
Yeah.
vote on both?
Yes.
It's all on one motion.
Okay. All right. EY 28.2, final report, 784, the Queensway zoning bylaw amendment application. Speakers attend. Do we have any speakers on 28.2? Good afternoon. Please state your name, Mr. Hunter. And you have 5 minutes, I'm sure you know.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, members of Community Council. My name is Craig Hunter. I'm the planning consultant and applicant on behalf of Urban Capital Rosewater 1, which is the developer of the project. I'll be pretty judicious with my time today. This is quite frankly, in our opinion, a really nice mid-rise development of the existing beer store on the Queensway on the northeast corner of Smith Crescent. The building today is well set back from the street, surrounded by surface parking, framed on all streets by the side, except for an 8-story building to the east, which is the Cube Condominium. What we're proposing to do is introduce a terraced mid-rise building that steps up from Queensway Park and the parking area to the rear along the L shape to a maximum height.
Mr. Hunter, I'm just gonna hold your time for 1 sec. Sorry. Is there any way we can darken that up so we can see that any better or no? No?
Pray for the
Come-
sun to go away.
Can we turn the lights off for a second or so we can see that? Can anyone see that? 1 sec, hang on. Well, that's better right there. Okay, I'm sorry, restrict your time.
Again, it's a terraced mid-rise building that steps up from 5, 6, 7, and 8, and then forms an L shape. It's cut back at this point to a one-story podium, which has the rooftop amenities for indoor and outdoor space. It sits next to and abuts the Cube Condominium to the east, which is also 8 stories. And that's the surface parking of Queensway Park today. And this is the new park, which the landscape architect, Jim Melvin, who's been working on the project with our team, is also working on the park design. Just a couple of key points. This is the retail level and the ground floor. So Smith Crescent, notably, the building's being set back well from the street, almost 7 meters, to create a really nice public boulevard along the edge with landscaping. The building is set back along the Queensway by 4 meters, creating almost a 9-meter separation from the curb. And landscaping will be created along both frontages. This is really unfortunate. The image with respect to the corner, the idea of creating cafes and still-out areas for a restaurant on the corner. These are some renderings that were from the community meeting, which was well attended, but no significant concerns expressed. And again, shows the nice green roof on top of the building, views towards downtown Toronto, which they were darker. And one final item, and we were really of like mind throughout this process. We worked very closely with staff on this. There was one different point of opinion with the final bylaw, and we hope to have some flexibility on that. This is the rooftop level, and the areas in yellow represent landing terraces for the suites below. They have actually 45% or 2-bedroom suites, and a good chunk of them are over 1,100 square feet. So they're a good size. The residents would have access to a roof terrace on top of the building that integrates a mechanical penthouse, and the yellow areas represent the landing areas, as they are being called, to access those private spaces. Staff would prefer that those be limited to 20 square meters in size. We are fine with that. 15 of the 17 do meet that requirement, but there's 2 just on the front that are 32 meters in size, and that is to integrate the mechanical penthouse. Otherwise, the spine of the building would actually be staggered at that one point of the building, and we think it makes for a nicely integrated architecture of the building, and we don't think it's posing any impacts with respect to the privacy light views. It faces the Queensway and is well set back from the building mass. Again, we support staff's recommendations. We appreciate all their efforts through the process. It's been a pretty diligent 1-year process on this, which is pretty compact for a rezoning in the city. And again, we thank them for their efforts, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Councillor Doucette?
My staff are going to shoot me for asking this, but do you have space for the beer store on your retail level?
Yes, we do. The beer store is coming back in a smaller format, and it's coming back on the east side with about 5,000 square feet.
And there'll still be some pull-in parking, or where would people park?
Yes, through the chair, the parking will be to the rear, and it's off a private lane, and there's 15 spaces being provided.
Okay. So staff don't have concerns about how residents are getting to your rooftop gardens?
No, and then in the staff report, it indicates that in principle, they're fine with the concept. It was just the size of the spaces and trying to limit that area on top of it.
And so each unit, some of these 2-bedroom units are going to each have their own private outdoor space at the top there,
On the
is that
rooftop,
right?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Campbell?
So how much retail space in total will there be?
There'll be a variety of shops, but about 18,500 square feet of total space.
And is that all along the Queensway?
Yes, it'll occupy the entire Queensway frontage and the corner of Smith Crescent.
So you said 18,000 square feet?
Yes, 18,500.
What is the present size, for example, of the beer store? I don't know.
It's about 7,500 square feet.
Oh, okay, so there's actually going to be more opportunity for retail than currently exists?
Yes, we're certainly hoping that that's the case, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no further questions, I have a few questions, Mr. Hunter. Where's the loading zone for this for the building? Where will the garbage be taken in, taken out? Okay, so the beer store, they'll also be loading in from that same location?
This is the proposed beer store space.
And where will they be getting their products in? Where
Getting it right here in the store. Right there.
So is there enough room for a tractor trailer to get in there?
Yes, this is a type G loading space, but it will not accommodate a tractor trailer, no.
So how are they gonna get their product?
They'll end up having to either bomb that or off the private service lane for a period of time when they have to unload.
Okay.
If they're using tractor trailers. But again, our understanding is their agreement to come back to this site was to come back to a more urban format store.
And where are they gonna go in the interim?
I don't know where they're going to be going.
Don't know. Okay, those are my questions. Councillor Duchano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I've got a motion to put up on the screen, and it deals with the small issue that the applicant has on the rooftop. It's a very technical motion. It's going to get into the weeds, and I'll read it. The Etobicoke York Community Council amend Recommendation 1 contained in the report from the Director of Community Planning in Etobicoke York District to now read 1. City Council amend the Etobicoke Zoning Code and Zoning Bylaw number 514/2003 for the lands at 784 the Queensway substantially in accordance with the draft zoning bylaw amendment attached as attachment number 7 to report dated January 30th, 2018, with clause 6A of the draft bylaw amendment to now read 6. The area shown with a maximum height of 28 meters on Schedule B shall also be limited to 8 stories in height, and any residential gross floor area above this level shall be limited to, and then A, 20 meters squared as per the staff report per dwelling unit, except for 2 units up to 32 meters squared per unit. It does not ultimately change the envelope of the building, it just makes it a little easier for those 2 units to be constructed. The community is very happy with the work that the applicant and the planners came forward with. It's going to be a beautiful building located right in the new village of Queensway, with a lot of amenity space with the park in the back. So we're excited about this development coming to the Queensway and hoping that you can support a minor technical motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Channel. Seeing no further speakers, all in favor of the amendment? Opposed, carried. Clause amended. All in favor? Opposed, carried.
Thank you very much.
28.3, draft plan standard condominium application 2522, 2542 Keele Street, request for direction report. We have a couple of speakers. Fabian Ebel.
We should be speaking together. Which one are we on there?
Oh, good afternoon. Sorry. Welcome. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors and Mr. Chairman. I'm Fabian Abel from YYZ Project Management. We're the builders of the development at 2522 Keele Street. The reason we wanted to attend the meeting today was, as I'm sure all of you are aware, that this particular project has a fairly lengthy history in this chamber, and with the report that staff has provided to request moving forward with both the OMB process and moving the item to City Council. We wanted to make sure that there wasn't any additional deferral of this item, as there has been a number of these going forward, in the past. As I mentioned, you're likely all very aware of the history of this particular project, as there have been motions in these chambers over the past 4 or 5 years on a number of different elements. These range from the initial zoning and site plan applications through the first OMB process and at the building permit and occupancy stages, and also through, now at this final registration stage. At each one of these stages, staff have submitted reports. These reports typically coming in response to questions regarding the planning, the approvals received for the development, and other matters such as this. In each one of these reports, the development has been found to be in perfect compliance with all planning matters and required processes. And these reports have come from the city building department, the city legal department, the city's planning department, and also from the OMB as well. I'll also note that in relation to the opposition that has been brought forward at this council, the council itself has also found some of these motions to be out of order on their face. Because of the procedural history, you might think that this is a complicated development, but I can assure you that this is a very straightforward development, 8-story mixed-use development, some commercial space on the ground level, very simple and unremarkable. I'd also like to thank city staff for working with us over the past several months in completing the final pieces of this application. But we are now at a stage where all of the questions have been answered, subject to the normal conditions that come with draft approval, as noted in the staff report of February 2nd. And so we feel that at this point we've provided everything that is necessary to move forward and to have the recommendations provided in the staff report to move forward to City Council. The main reason we're here is that our occupants have been in occupancy at this building for just about a year now, and with the new mortgage regulations and other timeline constraints, our purchasers are very worried that continued delays in having this project registered will put in jeopardy their ability to close the units. The value's gone up, but the mortgage rules are also a lot more stringent now. With that as well, the developer itself, having had to maintain the project over these past months, has also been prejudiced by these continued delays. And so at this point, all we're asking is that you please move forward with staff's recommendation outlined in the report. And I've also brought with me to the meeting today our surveyor and our legal counsel, should you have any technical questions regarding the application.
Thank you. You have a question, Councilor DeGiorgio?
Fabian, two things. First of all, are you aware that I was very, very instrumental in making sure that the residential people could occupy the building as soon as possible? As soon as possible. You may not agree with that.
That's not my understanding, but I'm...
Well, it will be your understanding after all the evidence is presented. But number two, you mentioned this is a very straightforward application, and I will ask your legal representative as to whether it's straightforward or not. But I want to know when YYZ became involved in this project, because they were not there from the start. And so they don't have all the information.
Well, we've been involved for at least
Since when?
the last...
Councilor George, let me ask you a question, please.
The last 4 years, I believe, 4 or 5 years.
So you were involved when, in 2013, the OMB issued a decision where they approved the zoning bylaw and the site plan. And for whatever reason, whoever was involved decided not to proceed to build in accordance with what the OMB approved. They had both an approval of the site plan and the zoning, and they did not begin construction. Yet you were involved and decided not to begin construction.
Question?
Why? Why did you not begin construction?
As has been set out in all of the staff reports, the building was developed in accordance with the requirements at the OMB throughout.
My point is, how did I delay construction when you got your zoning and site plan approved and you decided not to start construction? Not me.
You had initiated additional motions related to the conditional building permit at that stage and why it was issued in the manner that it was.
No, but you decided to proceed with a conditional permit. You didn't bother going to building department and say, I've got a zoning approved and I've got site plan approved. You didn't go to the building department and say, give me a permit.
That's perfectly standard process, Mr. Giorgio.
Perfectly
standard process.
To not go and ask for a building permit, but rather ask for a condition.
To move forward with a conditional building permit, yes.
Okay, and you decided to build, why did you?
Again, that's also set out in the staff reports.
But when did you start with a conditional building permit? Why not in 2013 when you got your approval?
I'm not sure that's relevant.
Oh, it is relevant because I didn't delay you applying for a conditional permit.
I did not say that necessarily.
Oh,
I'm saying that you have had motions throughout the process at the building permit stage and other pieces.
My motions were always, why not build in accordance with what they got approved? Please start building. That's what my motions were all about.
Question?
Okay, my question is, are you aware that that's what the intent of my motions were? To build in accordance with what you had approved? That's my question. He is or may not be aware of that.
Again, I'm not sure that it matters. The building was built according to the approvals that were received, and that, to me, is what is important here.
Okay. Are you aware that maybe I'll ask the lawyer this. Let me leave the question to the lawyers, because I was threatened to be sued personally for obstructing or preventing you from starting construction in 2013.
Okay, any further questions of the deputant? Seeing none, thank you. Our next deputant, Eduardo Linares.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Welcome. Sir, you have 5 minutes.
I actually don't have any statement. I'm the surveyor who prepared the draft plan of condominium. I'm here basically to answer any questions, any technical questions you may have.
Councilor DeGiorgio, question?
Yeah, a very quick question. Thank you. Under the zoning bylaw, the reference point to measure the elevation, or at least of the building, is listed geodesic 173.2 or something. What's the reference point when you say 173.2? Like where are you measuring the height from?
That's actually a question to ask the architect if you want, but I'll give you the theory behind geodetic elevations. Geodetic elevations
Sir, can you pull your mic down just a little bit there?
Sorry,
sir?
kind of short. Geodetic elevations in Canada until recently were based on mean sea level taken along the coast and integrated also with the United States to provide a geoid.
I understand.
Councilor DeGiorgio, let him answer the question, please.
Okay.
Councilor DeGiorgio, let him answer the question.
So, with specific point to the building, that has to be told to me where I measure. You know, the architect or yourself would say, I need a height. I need to know what the elevation is at this point.
Okay, but my point is, for example, when we measure heights of a house, we either measure the height from the middle of the road, we measure it from the base of the land that you build on, whatever, the measurement starts somewhere. In this case, the measurement starts at a number, 173.2. I need to know physically, what does that number represent? Does it represent the height of the middle of the road? Is it measured from the middle of the road? Is it measured from the bottom of the building? Is it measured from... I just need to know what that means.
I can't answer you that
And
question.
you can't answer that. Fine, that's fine. If you can't answer it, that's fine. Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Our next deputant, Isaiah Bannock.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's Isaiah Bannock.
Hi, Isaiah.
Counsel to YYZ.
Good morning. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Morning. Thank you. I just want to recommend briefly, I don't want to repeat what my friends have said. This is an application for condominium approval. All of the previous planning approvals, the form of the building is settled. This is just a question of getting the technical bits in place so people can own their units. And this is the last step that's needed. Staff, my client has worked carefully with staff support it. Staff wrote out a series of conditions that we've looked at, that everyone's agreed to. This is just the step to let people move into their homes. And that's what we're looking to get approved today. It's not about how tall a building is, what the setbacks are, all of the usual planning bits. That's been long decided years and years ago. So I ask Community Council to recognize their support of staff's position and our client to approve this draft plan of condominium. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor DeGiorgio, question.
In the context of transparency of the planning process, because a comment was made earlier, this is a very straightforward application. You are aware that a zoning bylaw amendment under Section 34 can be passed in a number of ways. For example, it can be passed pursuant to Section 37 of the Planning Act. It can be passed pursuant to Section 36 of the Planning Act. It can be passed pursuant to Section 38 of the Planning Act. And it can be passed pursuant to Section 113.2 of the City of Toronto Act. To your knowledge, under what scenario did this particular application, when it was made at the beginning, in full disclosure, under what scenario did it proceed?
Well, this proceeded by way of an appeal, a zoning bylaw appeal to the OMB.
It proceeded by way of an appeal.
That's right.
Oh, gee, that's not the question I asked.
Hey, Councillor Giorgio, let him answer the question. Give him an opportunity.
So this application was filed under Section 34 of the Planning Act. That's the zoning bylaw section of the Act. And you're correct, there's other sections that relate, for instance, to a temporary use bylaw, and you referred to some of those. This one proceeded under the zoning bylaw section, and there's a provision in the Planning Act that allows applicants to appeal to the OMB. That's what happened in this case. And then it becomes within the purview of the OMB and within the Planning Act and the OMB Act that the jurisdiction then turns to the OMB to make the decision on the zoning bylaw, and the board exercised its jurisdiction under those sections of the Act.
Mr. Bannock, what I'm asking you is, the original application was for a zoning amendment under Section 34. And what I'm asking you is, was it a zoning amendment where the applicant was asking for more density and height, which therefore was applicable to Section 37 might be applicable? Or was he not asking for more density and height? I know he appealed the application, but what did he appeal really? Is what I want to know. What did he appeal? Did he appeal that he was not being given more density than was entitled to? Or did he appeal conditions under Section 36? Or did he appeal something else under an interim control bylaw? Or did he appeal something else again? When I went to the board, I can tell you what I thought he was under appeal. I'm asking you, what was under appeal?
Well, I'm finding the question a little bit difficult. I'm trying to be helpful, but it's the entire bylaw that's under appeal. So all questions relating to the zoning bylaw and good planning are what was before the board years ago when this was determined. So it's not easy for me to give an answer on precisely what was and wasn't under appeal. It's the entirety of the bylaw.
So you're not going to be able to give me my answer, so I want to ask you two more questions very quickly, because I don't want to take up a lot of time. To your knowledge, given the definition of development as it exists under the Planning Act, is a change of use encompassed in the as a development under the Planning Act, under Section 4112? In other words, if someone say, I'm applying for a change in use, can you do that under Section 4112?
I'm not sure I'm able to answer that.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you. To your knowledge, when was the final zoning bylaw approved by the board?
I'd have to go back to my notes to check that. I can give you an answer in a minute, but it was
Well,
a
I
few
can tell
years
you
ago.
that there were decisions made by the board in in August of 2013, September of 2013, July 22 of 2015, and March 9th of 2017. So which one of those dates represents the approval of a final zoning bylaw by the board?
Okay, thank you. I've had a chance to look for the answer for you, Councillor. And I'm looking at page 2 of the city staff report, and they've set out that the zoning bylaw and site plan control applications for this property in principle, were approved in principle through its decisions dated August 27th, 2013, as amended September 16th, 2013.
Okay, so in 2013, the final zoning bylaw and the final site plan were approved as of September 16th, which, by the way, were a deviation from what this community council approved on September 10th of 2013. But put that aside, because that's a matter of evidence. You got your final approval. Your client got their final approval on September 16th, 2013. and they waited. They didn't go to the building department and say, look, I want to build this building. I'm entitled to a building permit. They didn't do that. They waited 2 years, and then they didn't do that anyway. They went for a conditional permit. And those are questions as to why. Why did they go for a conditional permit when they were entitled to a full permit? Is the answer that they weren't entitled to a full permit? For whatever reason?
There's many reasons why people don't advance or seek building permits immediately. There's no requirement to do so. It's in this case,
okay.
they followed all normal procedures, and they're now at the step where they're looking
They followed
to
the normal
do this.
procedures that 99% of the people that get an approval, including people that build a house and get an approval at Committee of Adjustment, follow. They go for a building permit. And you're saying these guys followed the normal procedure. Is that your
Yes.
answer? They
Yes.
followed normal procedure. Thank
Yes.
you.
Okay. Any further questions, the deputy? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Any further speakers to the item? Seeing none, questions of staff? Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff, there's if we approve the staff recommendation, there's an OMB hearing scheduled for June?
Through the chair, that's correct.
And at that point, what decisions would be rendered or arrived at?
Well, through the chair,
I'm totally confused by this file. I'll just have you know that. I mean, it's gone on and on and on. So what really is before us today?
So through the chair, it is unusual for a condominium application to be appealed to the board, but it is within their statutory rights. Usually when we get an appeal to the OMB, we bring forward a request for direction report. Sometimes we're able to work with applicants, as in this case, and work towards a settlement. That's what we've been working on with the applicant for the past few months. And the condominium application has been sorted out to staff satisfaction. So the way it's addressed in the staff report with the recommendations, there's a list of conditions that are also attached. There are our standard conditions tailored a little bit to the site-specific application, but they would be basically presented to the board as essentially a settlement.
So,
if it was to be adopted today.
But this whole application has already been approved by the Ontario Municipal Board. Is that correct?
Through the chair, the zoning and the official plan amendment and the site plan have all been approved at the Ontario Municipal Board.
Okay, thank
So
you.
it's just the condominium application we're dealing with today.
Okay, that's all my questions. I'll take them offline afterwards.
Because I don't want to
Councillor
belabor
George, a
this.
question?
You just made the comment, Sarah, that zoning bylaw was approved, site plan was approved, and the official plan amendment was approved?
Just the zoning bylaw, sorry, I misspoke. It's just the zoning bylaw amendment and the site plan.
They theoretically never applied for an official plan
That's right,
amendment.
that's correct.
Okay. But they may have received an official plan amendment.
No.
According to that, and that's an issue that is still being resolved because it's under appeal by the community. The new
No,
zoning bylaw.
there's nothing left under appeal for this site, except the condominium application.
Nothing that you're aware of, because we appealed the new zoning bylaw, and we appealed, that is the community, and appealed OPA 320. And we appealed it on the basis that those two have an impact on this development. Now, whether the board agrees or not is another issue. Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Hawley, a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff, and I think we'll start with planning. Am I correct in understanding this report that everything that has been built to date is consistent with the zoning and consistent with the site plan that was approved? Both of them were approved through the board, one in 2015 and one in 2017.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay. Am I understanding the report correctly? States save some exceptions that are listed in the conditions. Planning is generally happy with what it sees in the application and thus supports it.
That's correct.
So all that points to non-controversial. I did take note that the OMB has scheduled a 4-day hearing, and I wondered if I could receive comment either from planning or from the solicitor as to whether a 4-day hearing matches something that appears to be non-controversial in extent.
Yes, Mr. Chair, through you. The applicant secured an Ontario Municipal Board date, and they asked for 4 days in case they need that. If City Council agrees with the staff recommendation, you'll see that we also provide that if they can secure an earlier date, it wouldn't take 4 days. It would be a half-day appearance or even less than that to present the settlement, for the applicant to present the settlement to the board. So that could be moved up if there's a settlement at this point. 4 days is generous. I don't think taking 4 days, but the applicant wanted a deadline to if things didn't work out, they had a board date that they could go and have their application dealt with at the board.
Is 4 days unusual in length? Do you see this often? Somebody blocks a generous amount of time?
Well, no. It's always, the board asks the applicant how many days they think they need, and they want to make sure that they get it done in that stretch of time. So 4 days is not, I mean, it's long for a condominium approval. I would agree with that, but we don't get many condominium approvals, so I think they were being perhaps overly cautious.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you.
Seeing no further questions, thank you. Speakers? Councilor DeGiorgio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I do have some motions that seek to alter some of the conditions of the draft plan approval.
Sorry, Councilor DeGiorgio, I'm going to stop your time
Yeah,
for 1
they're not-
second. So you just scribbled a
Yeah,
motion
they
down here?
have it, I just don't know
Okay.
whether they.
So I'm going to stand this down to be fair to get
Okay,
this thing
let's-
written up. It's going to take her some time.
That's
Okay,
fine.
so
We
we'll
can stand the issue down. I don't have a problem with that.
Councilor Placer, just 1 sec. So there's a quite lengthy motion here that Councilor DeGiorgio's written up. We have to get the clerk's time to prepare it, and then we'll go to speakers. Yeah, well, it's going to take some time, so we're going to stand it down. Okay, Councilor Palazzo, point of order?
No, I was going to ask that that motion be circulated to members of council. It's much easier to see it because in screen
Okay,
it's very
so
fussy.
when that's drafted, we'll get it circulated, then we'll deal with it then, so we'll stand it down. Okay. 28.9, intention to designate under Part 1V, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, 2896 Dundas Street West. Tim Leslie to speak. Oh, Tina, I'm sorry, Tina. I'm sorry. My eyes are in my glasses. Hi, Tina, how are you? Welcome back. Good morning. And you have 5 minutes, Tina.
Thank you. As chair of the Junction Heritage As chair of the Junction HCD Board, it is once again my privilege to share enthusiastic support from our dedicated volunteers and community supporters for the staff recommendations and intent to designate the Treasury at 2896 Dundas Street West. Once again, we especially want to acknowledge the tenacious negotiating talents of preservation services and planning staff who have achieved the best possible outcome for this heritage building and our Junction community. Further kudos to Preservation Services for their efforts to prepare a comprehensive report that validates the intent to designate this property by describing the history of the building and the people who envisioned its construction in 1911. As mentioned at the January meeting, the Treasury is but one of the many stories that reflects the long history of the Junction and the people who built our community. We are fortunate to have a fabulous collection of heritage buildings, some of which are listed, but many are not. We hope you've had an opportunity to read our letter and the attachment with a list of the properties on the Heritage Register. Also noted in our letter are a few issues and concerns about the Heritage Register process. I had an interesting conversation at the recent Bloor West Village HCD study open house and learned there is research that proves the health and wellness of people living in heritage homes and districts is higher than that of people living in the soulless architecture that we are building today. It is therefore imperative that we take action to conserve more heritage districts and to designate more heritage assets at a pace that equals or exceeds the hyperactive rate of redevelopment in Toronto before it is too late. The future of well-being of its residents is at stake. Why has Toronto become a society that disrespects its cultural history? I visited other countries that celebrate their nation's culture and history, and would never allow redevelopment to obliterate or overshadow its architectural heritage. Other municipalities in Ontario have understood the value of their history and seemingly have better processes to conserve their heritage buildings. If the junction loses its heritage architecture, it will lose its unique historical identity, and it will not be the special place that it is today. There are also research studies that demonstrate the economic benefit of heritage preservation. Many industries, such as television and film productions or tourism, depend on, and small businesses thrive in heritage districts. Even the Junction BIA understands this value and promotes its heritage in marketing our neighborhood. Our letter provides a source reference for the research report, Older, Smaller, Better, measuring how the character of buildings and blocks influences urban vitality. We heard and share your concern about the timing of the intent to designate properties, which is unfortunately based on a reactive process. Typically, the existing process operates in crisis mode, and priority is given to properties at risk of demolition. Consequently, a heritage nomination is only processed after a property's ownership changes and when an application to redevelop the property is received. Unless this procedure changes, confusion and delays will continue. I think we agree that it should be a transparent and proactive process, but only you as councillors can enact that action, and we would be most grateful for your intervention. What is within our control is to assure you that we intend to gather the research evidence and prepare nomination forms to designate our 39 properties that are currently listed on the Heritage Register, and our action is not connected in any way to any impending redevelopment. We are also committed to preparing at least 25 new nomination applications to add to our heritage inventory. Thank you again for the opportunity to share details about the Junction HCD and other concerns that have a significant impact on our ability to achieve our conservation vision. And if you have any questions with what was written in the report or our letter or what I've said today, happy to do so. Thank you.
Bang on 5 minutes, Tina, good job. Any questions?
Thank you.
Seeing none, thank you very much.
You're
Any further
welcome.
speakers to the item? Seeing none, questions of staff? I'm going to ask Heritage is here, I think. Mary's here. Questions of staff? I'm going to have a question for... Morning, Mary. Welcome to the West. How are you?
Thank you. I'm great. How are you?
Good. Mary, we had a pretty lengthy debate the last meeting on this great piece of property in Councillor Doucette's ward, and I think the applicant was asking for a meeting with Heritage, wasn't forthcoming, but my understanding was a meeting that took place a day after this council meeting, 2 days after. What changed and what happened to?
Well, what changed was the applicant was willing to properly conserve the property and agreed to a reasonable setback of the addition to the property, which allowed the landmark to continue to be the most prominent part of the property. So we've all agreed with planning staff that it was appropriate. It went to committee of adjustment. It was approved.
Okay, so the meeting was there any negotiation, or was it just what planning staff wanted, or was there a negotiation on that? Because they were requesting with a meeting with planning wasn't forthcoming. That was their deputation here, and I know you know the Deed and Autos very well. Their history stands for itself within the city with regards to heritage properties, but was there a negotiation, or I just don't know why it just got resolved in 1 or 2 days?
We had actually, we'd always been open to speaking with the applicant, and but that was not something that came together before the meeting. From my perspective, we were willing to meet. Afterwards, I think there was a greater willingness to move closer to what the city requirements were. and that isn't just an opinion, it's based on professional perspective and our official plan policies and the Planning Act and all the other acts. And we wanted a little bit more than they were initially willing to give. And they went back to us and said, okay, but we're willing to do this. And so we said, fine, that's enough.
Yeah. And they're happy with the designation too?
As far as I understand, I wish they were here today to say that, but I know that they got their approvals, and it actually adds value to their property, so it should be a good thing.
Thanks, Mary. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you. Councillor Doucette to speak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I will be moving the staff recommendation, which I tried to move last month. First of all, I'd like to thank Tina for coming back again. I really appreciate you coming. You always put things into perspective as to what our community is like. And we know that Mr. DiTiano bought this property knowing it was going to be designated. What I spoke about last month was the fact that, as I explained to him, designation and C of A are two separate items. This community council opted to not separate them and therefore decided not to designate this last month. As you've also heard, thank you very much to Heritage Preservation. The reason they weren't able to meet that week was because it was in the middle of Christmas. So they'd never said they weren't going to meet. They just said we can't meet this particular week. The conversations were ongoing. And as you've heard, the meeting they had after Community Council, the proponent made the changes requested by Preservation. The building, his two-story addition, is going to fit in with our community, but most important, it is preserving a beautiful heritage building. It's going to be set back, so when you're coming along Bloor Street, you don't suddenly see this new building on top. So I knew we would get there. I guess this community council didn't quite get that. But the point is, we are preserving this building. I want to thank Preservation for all their work. It's not an easy job, I know that. But we do have some people who buy heritage buildings to preserve them. And I think that is great. And they know that Preservation will work with them to preserve what we need to preserve, but also add the extra features to that building, which is what the new owner would like to do. So it's a win-win situation. As I say, I'd like to have done this last month, so Tina and Mary didn't have to come and visit Etobicoke again. So on that, as I say, I will fully be supporting the staff recommendation, and I would actually like a recorded vote, please.
Any further speakers? Seeing none, Councillor Doucette's moving the staff recommendations, recorded vote. Councillor DeGiorgio, Councillor Doucette, Councillor Palacio, Councillor Nunziata, Councillor Grimes, Deputy Mayor Holliday, Councillor DeChano, Councillor Campbell, Councillor Ford. That passes unanimous. Thank you. Okay. 2824 lane designation, Roy Ark Road and private driveway access to Humbertown Shopping Centre north of Strathhumber Court. We have speakers. Councillor Ford, I think this is yours, right? 24? You have the conflict? You have to excuse yourself. Our first speaker is Jean Warren. Good afternoon. Oh, good morning, Mrs. Warren. Welcome.
Thank you.
You have 5 minutes.
It's a real privilege to be able to speak to you as a citizen, and that's our democratic right, but I really appreciate it. Thank you. I'd also like to begin by commending Councillor Mamalidi, who isn't present here, but his insightful comments about city staff planning versus local groups is very valid. Everybody who has ever been involved with a business, not with a business, but with a local group dealing with planning staff knows what he speaks. My comments today, in fact, relate to not what Councillor Campbell had been proposing, but in fact is a totally different needed comment and focus from this group concerning a laneway, which is in fact a parking area which is used as a shortcut between two buildings near Humbertown Plaza. This shortcut where cars zip from Royal York Road through to the Kingsway is dangerous. It puts pedestrians in jeopardy. I have almost been hit 3 times, and in fact, somebody has been killed at the end of this parking lot / laneway between these 2 roads in the past. I have submitted correspondence to you about my situation. I have found out that this lane is to become, this lane, in fact, this shortcut through this parking lot is to become an official road through First Financial's plans for Humbertown Plaza. And I'm interested to note that this, as far as I am aware, has never been up for discussion within the Humbert Valley Village Residents Association. All we heard about at those meetings, most of which I attended, was the height of buildings proposed on that property. The solution to this situation, where cars zip between Royal York Road and the Kingsway, is already evident through the use of Lambeth Road. Lambeth Road connects both Royal York Road and the Kingsway. It does not, however, presently allow left-hand turns from Royal York Road because of a small concrete barrier which is placed at that intersection. If that barrier is removed and an arrow is painted to indicate a left turn onto Lambeth Road, and if this issue is referred to Transportation Services, which is I am requesting, then this eliminates pedestrians being hit and allows cars wishing to turn left onto the Kingsway to use Lambeth Road instead. So I'm requesting that the council seek the services of the transportation group and follow up after its study to ensure that a left-hand lane indicated is painted on Royal York Road under the railway tracks, which is similar to the area that Councillor Campbell is focusing on. And this will eliminate this dangerous situation of pedestrians having to look for these cars using this parking lot as a shortcut between 2 roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Warren. Questions? Councillor Campbell?
So thank you for your deputation. You commented that you've walked along that sidewalk and you've almost been struck 3 times, you said.
In fact, it's when I've been crossing from the sidewalk to the bulk barn, which is one of the buildings on the property at the edge of this this shortcut.
Okay, because when you traverse Royal York, you cross at the traffic light.
Initially, to get to that side of the road, yes, to the east side.
And you acknowledged in your deputation that what you're speaking of has really no relation to the report that's before us.
Correct. This is a new issue I wish to bring before the council.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Hawley, the question.
Have you contacted the property manager? Because I think it's private property, so I think they can put humps in there at any point in time. I know the parking lot, I use it all the time.
Okay.
Have you written to the plaza?
No, I haven't followed up with them.
Would you consider that?
Certainly.
As something that, is within their power, has nothing to do with council, and if there's cars zipping
You're talking
through.
about addressing a letter to First Capital?
Yeah, whoever owns the property where the bulk barn sits, if I personally haven't seen it, and I know the parking lot, but if you live there and you've seen cars zipping through there, one would think that it's a responsibility of the property owner to make sure that it's safe in their parking lot. Perhaps you would consider writing a letter to them to say, I've seen this, maybe you should look at this.
Thank you for your comments. Perhaps Councillor Campbell could assist me with that because I don't know who to contact with them. But this shortcut, which has been used all the time I've lived in the area, which is 13 years, is beyond belief. And the people that drive through there are unfocused. They're speeding as well. So anything that can be done to stop this, I would appreciate.
Good? Stephen? You good?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Ms.
you.
Warren. Any further speakers to the item? Seeing none, questions of staff? Seeing none, Councillor Campbell.
I want to thank staff. I want to thank Mark Hargo for his work on this. This has gone on for a couple of years, and it addresses a flow problem on Royal York northbound, where traffic would queue all the way from the lights at Humbertown till below the overpass at Dundas. So I want to thank Mark for his work to change that from 1 lane to 2 lanes, and with that, I'll just move the staff recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Campbell's moving the staff recommendations. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Ford, you can come back. 2812, front yard parking appeal, 358 Bartlett Avenue North. Are there any speakers on Bartlett Avenue? Bartlett Avenue? Seeing none. Questions of staff? Seeing none. Councillor Palacio to speak. Bartlett Avenue, 358.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I just had my questions to staff offline, and I'm going to move the alternate recommendations within the report. Now, what I like to note is that transportation staff, they are recommending denial of this application, and that's because of technicalities of Chapter 19 of the Municipal Code. And they are also recommending that attachment C within the report be adopted. And that's to keep the existing asphalt that's in front of the property, and also to build a concrete box is to detract anyone from parking there. So those are issues that actually that the community is 100% against. So that those recommendations, literally speaking, doesn't make justice in terms of improving the community. This kind of front yard parking application with the recommendations that are before you is the kind of thing that the community is in very much support of it, and that's changing the trend in terms of landscaping, in terms of creating and green spaces and embracing environmentally friendly materials, disconnecting the downspouts, and all of that. So that's the trend actually in the community, even without front yard parking applications. When an application is approved and they see that someone is bringing something beautiful there, what the next door neighbors are doing, they're trying to do the same. So that's good news, and amazingly, every summer we have these summer tours within the community just to check the best gardens out there. And that's something that's, so that's a trend that's happening in the community overall. Now, the majority of residents in the area, they do support this application because that helps to beautify the community. And even though that, well, the recommendations that are before you from city staff validates what I'm just saying it. Now, this property is a duplex with the owners, a young couple, professionals, and they take a lot of pride, like the rest of the community, and on what they have. So they were advised that for them to get the application, they have to go through the process, which they did. They haven't done anything illegally. So they went through the process. They paid almost $1,200 for the application and for the appeal, and amazingly, to get a denial on both. So when I look at the level of support from the community, the majority of people who were polled by the clerk are in support. I also submitted a petition this morning that they are in support of this application. So the community is speaking to it. The community is in support of it. As a local councillor, I'm listening to what they have to say, and I will definitely go ahead with what they want. They live there, they pay taxes, they see the improvements there. They don't want concrete, they don't want asphalt, they don't want planter boxes that will detract from what they are trying to accomplish. They want to beautify that. So these recommendations actually, it does that. I don't know why there is so much opposition very often to front yard parking when we're bringing something new that beautifies our neighborhoods. So these recommendations actually also will make sure that a tree, there is an existing tree that's going to be maintained, and the integrity of it is not going to be compromising anyway. So I ask my colleagues to support the recommendations that are before you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further speakers? Seeing none, the motion is on the screen. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Opposed? Carried. 2813 Front Yard Parking Appeal 349 Windermere Avenue. We have a speaker, J.O. Cavalcanti. Good morning, sir. Welcome.
Good morning, and thank you for
You have
having us here.
5 minutes.
When we first got our place, 349 Windermere, it was a great source of happiness and joy, and but within the years and the city growing, and we had our 2 small children, it became a bit of a burden and at times a nightmare, as our kids almost got run over by a car many times. And I come here humbly and desperately to ask for an exemption to the chapter, which my initial application was denied. We are a young family with a 3-year-old and a newborn. And many times when we try to find parking or park our car, we cannot simply find parking at all. And on a street where it's the 40 kilometers, many times you see cars coming out of the highway at 80 kilometers. And again, as I'm repeating, my daughter almost got run over. If it wasn't for the driver's attention, I mean, I wouldn't know what could have happened. Another factor is a lot of the business people that park on Windermere, they simply park there for 7 a.m. to 7 at night, making it impossible for us to even though with a parking permit, we cannot even find parking for ourselves. And many times, almost every day, I call the city parking authority, and it's only a $15 parking tickets, and they simply, for them, they don't care. They just park there. They're the same place, the same cars. So we conducted a study as well in here on the subject area 1. 94% of the houses, they have parking, and either legally or illegally they have front pads. But we want to do this on the right way. We want to support the community. We're part of the community. We feel blessed that we actually have a house in Toronto, and we got into this fiercely, like a real estate market. And we have our 2 daughters there. And as you can see in the subject area 2, 97% of the properties, they do have parking pads as well. We conducted a poll where 88% of my neighbors, they support it. As again, we are part of the community. We organized parties for the kids there. And the only person that opposed, she lives in Adjun's house, and she's got parking for 1 car, but at times, I don't know if you guys have saw the file that I sent. Many times they park 3 cars in there. So for some reason she said no, but she was the only one. And we agree with the fees and methods of if it gets approved to construct the padding within the laws, permeable or semi-permeable, plant a tree. And to conclude, we trust that the data contained in this report individually and cumulatively supports our application for a front parking pad. Our primary reason for the application is related to the safety of our 2 small children and many dangerous situations that we've been faced with loading and unloading them into our vehicle. The winters are even more dangerous as the snowbanks force us to park further on the busy street. And second, to the safety of our children, we strongly believe that based on the positive poll and the majority of homes directed in the area, or parking applications in line with the norms. And again, I humbly here with my family asking for your support.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Doucette?
Thank you for coming today, and it was very nice speaking to you yesterday. Just wanted to correct one thing. Windermere Avenue is now 30 kilometres. This community council supported that several months ago, back in July, because we were hearing about cars speeding down Windermere. So we have tried to slow down Windermere, obviously, because there is a school at partway through. So just confirming that it has actually reduced to 30K.
Thank you.
Yeah. In the report, and I want to confirm this with you, and I'll confirm with staff, it says that there are no on-street parking permits regarding this address. You do have an on-street parking permit?
I do have the permit, yeah.
Okay. And sorry, how long have you lived at the house?
5 years.
Okay. And you've had a parking permit, all that?
Always, but again, many times we try not to even take our car out because it's impossible to find parking back, especially for her to unload the car with the kids. in order for us to actually get out of the car, the whole transit has got to stop because the street's so narrow and many times. I know the community, they respect the speed, the 30 or 40 kilometers, but because we are close to the highway, a lot of cars, they're not part of the community and they just speed like at 80, 100 kilometers and is a source of pain for us when you kind of see that.
I know cars do seem to be going very, very fast, but we do have studies. So anyway, thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Campbell, the question.
So I get why you want this. Presumably you bought the house thinking you were going to have kids at one day, I suppose. And so you say you have difficulty parking in front of your house.
That's right.
But there's not that many permits that have been issued for the street.
That's correct, but what happens is many cars there, maybe they park there and they take the transit to TC Jane or Runnymede or business owners on Bloor Street. They literally park from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and the ticket when they're fined is $15. So for them they don't care.
Okay. So looking at the photograph that's in the staff report, if you have a front yard, a parking pad, there's a great big hedge that goes right to the edge of the sidewalk. Is that your hedge? And so you can take your time, but if you're backing out with that hedge there, that hedge is going to have to be trimmed significantly, and then we have another issue. We have a fence exemption or something, I suppose.
Yeah, that's my hedge.
That's your hedge.
But we'll definitely comply with all the safety
because
norms.
you would not be able to see backing out with that monstrosity there.
I mean, I'll make sure that we design so, I mean, we'll become even safer, sure.
And so this would involve the loss of one on-street parking space, I suppose, if you have this. Right. Okay.
I don't think it's his head.
It doesn't matter. I've already asked that question.
Okay.
And so, and all right, I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Any further questions? Councillor Deputy Mayor Haldane?
Thanks for speaking to us. You've been there for 5 years. How long are you planning to stay? Are you planning to sell any time?
No,
Got a
I
growing
plan to
family?
stay for a long time. I mean, this could, again, we are blessed. When we first got into the house, we couldn't sleep because we went through bidding wars and we wanted it here because of the Catholic school that is around it and the Swansea, so we don't have any plans to move.
Where do you park your car now?
I try to park right in front of my property.
Right.
If I do have it.
You're a block from Bloor, so that's a roll of the dice. So where do you park it now?
When I don't have parking?
Yeah, when you drive home today, where are you going to park it?
If I don't have space, I'll probably have to park on Austin or the Forest, and within an hour have to move, otherwise I'll get a ticket. So I'll be the whole day like driving around till I find parking on Windermere.
So your permit allows you where on Windermere?
On Windermere, from my house south 2 blocks.
South 2 blocks. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Any further speakers to the item? Seeing none, questions of staff? Councillor Doucette, questions of staff. You're good, sir. You can sit down. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
In the report, it says that there's no parking permit to this address, but the gentleman told me yesterday, and he's told me again today, he does have a permit.
There is a permit. I just realized the error in the report.
Thank you.
The printout, the way it's printed is that the permit is not renewed. However, he picked up the permit and paid for it the previous term, so he picked it up for 2 terms.
Okay, so he did it for the 1 year, which most of us do.
Yes.
Perfect,
So
okay.
the printout was incorrect, the way it's highlighted.
Okay.
And I just noticed that.
Just wanted to
Apologize
double
for that.
check, because that was my question would be, why are you asking for a parking pad if you don't have a car? The next question, Windermere is street-specific parking, correct? So if he goes home and he can't get a spot on the street and he parks on a side street, he can only stay there for the posted amount of time on that street?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Councillor Campbell?
So that doesn't make any sense to me at all. If he can't find a spot on his street, why do we prohibit him from parking on another street?
That's the permanent parking that's approved for the area. It's only on that street,
Is that
street specific.
that can be changed though, couldn't it? So could you have a so let's say he's living on Windermere, could he have a parking permit that would be applicable for other streets, adjacent streets?
The way the bylaw is right now, no, it's street specific. If it became an area, on an area basis and including other streets, then yes, they could.
And so, on this particular street, there are 157 spaces, of which there are only 37 permits, correct?
Correct.
So for the unoccupied spaces, what are the parking regulations?
I'm not.
What are the parking restrictions?
I don't have that information with me.
Shouldn't we have that information? I mean, that information should be basic on what the parking restrictions are. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Nunziata had a question.
Yeah, I just have a question. How many other permits are there on this block that has front yard parking?
On this block itself, there's only one. Just the one small block, one property.
But from where the pole was done?
Yes,
That's where the pole for the park.
correct.
So the one front yard parking pad, does that individual have a street permit as well?
I don't have that information, sorry.
Because there are people that have front yard parking pads and they have more than one car and they have a street permit as well. So you
That's
don't
correct.
know.
No, I don't have that,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Councilor Platts had a question.
Thank you. Mr. Pellegrini, you mentioned that we have, parking is there on a street basis as opposed to area basis.
That's correct.
Was that way all the time, or that change came into effect during the last few years? Do you know?
I'm not aware of any changes recently. I don't have that information.
Within the neighboring streets, are those streets based on area basis or street based as well?
There's no permanent parking on those.
And do they have access? This applicant, does he have access through a public lane? Do they have off-street parking facilities?
Nothing at all, no.
So the only option for them to have a parking space, that would be through this process, to have their own parking space.
That's correct.
There was a poll done, and the majority of people who were polled, they are in support of this application, are they?
Yes, they are.
What's the percentage of support of those who responded to it?
84%.
84%.
4% in favor.
Of the community, they are in favor. 84% of residents in that street, they're in favor of it.
Sorry, 88%.
That's okay. Great. To forestry. Do we have anyone from forestry? If not, the question, I don't know if you know, is there a space to plant a tree next to the proposed front yard parking?
It would be feasible. According to forestry, it would be feasible to plant an additional tree.
So it's feasible to have a tree there as well.
But it would have to be a very small tree, not a large growing species.
What's the frontage of this property?
7.62 meters.
And that would be about close to 25.
25 feet.
25 feet. And the parking pad is 2.2, so it's about 9 feet altogether.
8.5 feet wide, yes.
So there is plenty of space to put a tree.
There's about 8 feet from the parking pad to the property line on
So it's
the
feasible
north
to have
side.
a city tree there. Great, thank you. No further questions.
Okay, any further questions of staff? Seeing none, thank you very much. Okay, speakers? Councillor Doucette?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I did speak with the proponent yesterday, and I did explain to him that unfortunately I cannot support this because it takes a spot off the street. In my 7.5 years, I have not supported a parking pad which removes a spot off the street, because our parking on our street isn't just for the resident, it is for everyone. I do sympathize with him that he is near Bloor Street. There is a lot of parking here. He's near a church. He's near 2 churches, actually. So I know we do have people visiting these properties and parking in these spaces. He mentioned he has particular people parking there all day. I am going to work with him to get parking enforcement out, because at this point in time, they tell me they have not received the complaint, therefore they haven't been out to ticket. We will work on that, definitely. Windermere is a fairly busy street. It is a lot of young families living there. They come into our communities. It's fantastic. We've got an amazing school down the street. And we've worked hard as the community with the parent councils to slow down the traffic on Windermere. As I mentioned before, this community council supported reducing the speed from 40 to 30. I do appreciate not everyone goes 30, but majority of the residents do look at the speed signs because they do live in our community and they know we have young children in a school down the street, as I say. So that is, as I say, I did speak to the proponent yesterday. He is aware of this. So unfortunately, I am supporting the staff recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor DeChano to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will not be supporting staff recommendations, but I do have a motion to support the alternative recommendations.
Are you moving number 2?
I'm moving number 2. For the reasons I believe in, I look at this family here and I see 2 beautiful young children, and I think that safety should be paramount. They do have a home on Windermere. There is lots of parking in the area. I understand that we take away 1 parking spot, but we're creating another parking spot for a resident on that street. I think our job here, folks, is to strike a balance between what residents want and how we run and move a city. You know, calling parking enforcement, telling them to look around and then make sure things are getting better. I have to hear that the resident has to park on another street and then an hour and a half later get back in his car and move it and look like, to me, this is maddening. I mean, and I'm unsure why some of us here have all this respect for trees, but we don't have respect for young children and families who need a safe place to park their vehicles. So I'm hoping you guys will support the alternate recommendations in the staff report as worded. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Holliday.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to read it out because I know that the clerk is. No, I thank the clerk for getting the motion typed out that quick. In the event motion 1 by Councillor DeChano to permit a parking pad be approved, Etobicoke York Community Council requests the Director of Transportation Services to review the sight lines around this new parking space and take whatever steps. I take Councillor Campbell's very perceptive point looking at the photo. There's a hedge right there, and if there's one thing that's really dangerous about what we talked about today is when somebody's backing a car over a sidewalk, and that's when people get run over if they can't see who's coming or going. So if it passes, I think that needs to be addressed. I will speak very quickly to what my thoughts are on this. Ever since Council adopted a policy to essentially end the debate on parking pads, we're in that final period right now, the last requests that have gone through the system. I've taken a fairly disciplined position of if it doesn't meet the policy, then I don't support it. And that is really trying to be as equitable as possible to everybody. There are physical characteristics of any property that you look at, and if you read those physical characteristics, you can figure out pretty quick as to whether or not that property qualifies for a parking pad. And time again, it seems that Community Council waves these through just because the person has made the application, and I don't find that to be an equitable process. And so therefore, I won't be supporting the addition of this pad. But as I mentioned, should it go through Community Council, I think it's very important that we take some steps to make sure that it's a safe one. Thank you.
Councillor Platzer to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will support the recommendations from Councillor DeChano. That's the alternative recommendations. with, I would like to be consistent. I happen to live in the area, and in terms of what I see and what this community council has decided in the past as well. So when I see a young family that there is a reason why they're applying for it. It's not just for the heck of it. There is a real need. There is gentrifying. You have young professionals with young families that they really need parking. Now, is with regards to my dear colleague, Councillor Holiday, Deputy Mayor Holiday, is permit holders, and I happen to be one of them, by choice, is we have a heck of a problem to try to find a parking space in any street of the former City of Toronto or the former City of York. Why? Because we don't get the Cadillac level of services that the rest of Toronto gets. For example, in Etobicoke, parts of the Etobicoke, North York, Scarborough, where streets are plowed. We ended up, permit holders, we ended up with ice banks and piles of snow, and Councillor Doucet knows that. That's extremely difficult to find a parking space. So as a permit holder, it's very difficult to find a parking spot, especially when you have parking on a street basis. Good luck to you. So in essence, you are paying for the service, you are paying for the parking, and you're not getting the service. So I find that's a little bit ironic and unjust in terms of the implementation of any policies. We have to be consistent, and therefore, Mr. Chairman, I think that in terms of fairness, I urge you to support the alternate recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Palacio. Councillor Mammoliti.
You didn't think
Well, I thought for a minute. Councillor Mammoliti to speak.
You know, Groundhog Day is here.
Just passed.
That's passed. I'm not, Council just said is put in a very difficult position because she wasn't around when the residents in the former City of Toronto and in York and some other areas were complaining there wasn't any parking for them. Things have changed. They need 2 vehicles. They have babies. They have that sort of thing. So Toronto created a permit system, and they said, well, we're quite prepared to pay for a permit in front of our lots if we don't have to park on the street to take up the spots on the street. So Toronto, in its wisdom, and so did York, decided, well, let's make our residents happy. Totally a political decision back then, and created a system to allow that to happen. That system turned into a system of, well, we don't want any more cars on any more streets. We don't want any cars anywhere anymore. And so let's put a moratorium on pads because that's the best thing that we could do right now because there's just too many cars. In the meantime, you've got streets that have been approved for pads over the years. And with pads, it's not just about a parking pad, but I think the last estimate was that if you had a parking pad in front of your house, the value of your house goes up about $20,000, maybe more in certain areas. And Councillor Doucet says more in hers. So where's the fairness in a government saying we have allowed some residents to increase the value of their house by $50,000 or $60,000 in some areas, and now we're eliminating them completely? And so we're now faced with a situation where with one neighbor, their value because of government's policies have increased $50,000 or $60,000, and the neighbor next door who wants one, who just had a baby, is being told, well, sorry, the same people, the same body, the same politicians that created one policy have now created another, and you don't have the same rights as your neighbor to increase the value of your house. That's the way I see all of this. That's what I see as an unfairness to communities right now as we speak, as we go through with these policies, right? This house, this couple, this family deserves the same thing that their neighbor got, whether it was last year, whether it was before the moratorium, or whether it was 20 years ago. they deserve the same thing. And if we're too lazy as politicians to start talking about the mistakes we make with respect to this and go back to the drawing board and figure out how to make it work, then we don't deserve to be here. All we're doing is crippling our communities by stopping them from doing this. There's a newborn baby there, for crying out loud. What do we need? No, seriously, Mr. Chairman, what you tell me, what do we need?
Not crying out loud.
We need a motion like this to support, and that's why we do it individually now, right? I think it's because of that. Councillor just said it's not your fault. You're put in a position. I understand it. But I think families like this deserve to come first before our ridiculous moratoriums and the war on the car, as far as I'm concerned.
Councillor Campbell to speak.
You can set the timer, Mr. Chair. I'm going to support Councillor DiCiano's motion, and I don't disagree with what Councillor Mammoliti said. I feel for Councillor Doucette, because I don't like to see the loss of on-street parking. And for me, the problem is that there are, there's 157 spaces. There's 120 empty spaces, and he can't get a spot on a street. Like that's a parking regulation problem. And I don't know if the fines aren't high enough or the restrictions aren't great enough, but he should be able to park on the street. So that's a problem that I think for transportation services or for the local council to work toward. And for him to have to go a street over, like the Councilor DiCiano said, it's nuts. He has to go over to another street, park, and then pick it up in an hour and a half. Anyway, the problem for me is that the way the permit system is being implemented, and then it's being policed or it's not being policed. And so, regrettably, we're going to lose, you'll lose the lawn, and you'll lose a parking space on the street, which is now lost forever. You don't pick one up because the guy is now going to park in his driveway, but then when he's gone to work, the space in front of his house is gone. So that impacts everybody who wants to go into the area. So there, I'm 1 minute and 12 seconds, and I'm all finished there, Mr. Chair.
It's 1 minute and 15. You got lots of time left. Want to keep going? Any further speakers? Seeing none. Councillor DiCiano's motion is going to go first to grant the front yard parking. Be on the screen. Oh, that screen's not working? There it is. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. On Councillor Holliday's motion, all in favor? Opposed? That carries. Clause amendment, all in favor, opposed, carried. Okay. 2814, application for fence exemption, 34 Renown Road. Are there any speakers? Oh, we do have a speaker.
No, point of order.
Yeah.
This is something that staff have said no to. Does this go to council now, so council can squash our decision yet again?
No, the state's here.
So council doesn't have an ability to squash any decision in this case?
No. Unless it's a tree. Okay, 28.
There's a bill. Maybe there's a
2814.
bill that comes forward.
Application fence exemption, 34 Renown Road. No Polacini?
They can pull it from committee.
You're welcome. Okay.
Good morning, Council.
Good afternoon, good morning. You have 5 minutes. Yeah, still morning.
Thank you for listening to me speak here. Just wanted to, as the homeowner of 34 Renown Road, we're here for some cedar trees that I've planted on the north side of my front lawn. Just in conjunction, I've sent everybody an email with some photos, just showing you the location and unsightliness of what we see every day, pretty much, of vehicles, trucks, the bar and wing that's located at the corner of Renown Road and Dundas. So pretty much these cedar hedges stop us from seeing all that. It also mitigates the potential danger to, I have 2 young children as well, which like to play on the front lawn. So that will help them stay within our property and not run onto the street or run onto my neighbor's driveway, to mitigate any danger there. And we also last year spent renovation on our house, and we
We were able to add some armor stone, interlocking, greenery, hedges, so it just makes it the curb appeal look to our to the look that we had. The one thing we did take really into consideration is how far we brought the cedar hedges out. I think we left for my safety and everybody else's safety on Renown Road, was that we left approximately 22 to 25 feet of open space from the driveway to the last cedar, which gives enough space for anybody going in and out of the driveway to see both ways. We pretty much followed a fence line on the north side of 32 Renown Road where they have a fence. We kind of did the same alignment as that so that it didn't affect anybody's view going in and out of the driveways. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Sorry, can I just, was everybody able to get the email? Because I have some pictures.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were finished. You still?
Oh, I was just saying, did everybody get the email that?
It would have been circulated,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so question, Deputy Mayor Holliday.
Thank you. So you're the homeowner of 34?
Yes.
And so this is your hedge that we're talking about?
Yes.
Great. And it's put on the property line between you and 32, so between your driveway and 32?
Yes.
Okay. Do you or does somebody at 32, anyone own commercial vehicles, trailers, large vehicles?
At 32 Renown Road does, yes.
30, can you describe a little bit about?
Yeah, so there's usually, in the summertime, it could be trailers, it could be any pickup trucks. In the fall, it goes from leaf blowers to snow plows that's constantly parked on the driveways that we have to see every day. So that kind of protects us from looking at all that, and also the safety of my kids going. If a ball goes on the driveway, who knows what they're going to hit. But yeah, there's trailers, trucks, all types of vehicles on that driveway.
Is your driveway a single or a double, and is 32 a single or a double driveway?
It is a single and a half, I'm assuming.
Okay, and
because
then
when we did our extension last year, we extended the driveway.
Okay, and do you park in between the houses?
Do I park? I park on the right side.
Yeah, between the houses and then on the driveway, and the same thing for 32. Like
Yeah.
32 is about the same as your house.
Yeah,
in terms
so
of-
yeah,
I
so it
understand.
works to be. We don't really use that side. 4 feet of that is our property. We don't really use it. It's just like a common area so that we can park the cars.
Okay.
So yeah.
Thank you. It's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions of the deputy? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Any further speakers to the item? Welcome, sir.
Hi, I'm Musa Talil of 32 Renown Road. The only issue that I have with the hedges is whenever I'm backing out with my vehicles, I can't see what's coming down the street that way. With the new interchange and everything going on Dundas and Bloor there, all the traffic has been somehow coming through our street and everything else. If I'm playing on the street with my children, I can't see what's coming down the street. So basically, it's a safety issue. In terms of having my vehicles, I have commercial vehicles, but they're also my daily drivers. I drive all those vehicles. They're all my daily drivers. So my only issue with those hedges is I can't see when I'm backing out. In 2008, I was backing out of my driveway and I already got hit. And the police made it my fault because I was backing out. So that is my issue with that.
Okay, questions? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Any further deputants to this item? Seeing none, bring it in. Questions of staff? Seeing none, Councillor DeChano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, one of those items that, for myself, you're caught between a rock and a hard plate to come to a resolution. So I've got a motion that I'd like to put up, actually. And the motion states that I'll grant the application for a fence exemption by the applicant of 34 Renown Road with the condition that 5 trees in the front yard hedge are removed, thereby allowing 5 remaining trees in the front yard hedge to be maintained and permitted to grow to 2.44 meters as requested. Direct and require that the front yard hedge be maintained in good repair without alteration. Direct and require that at such time as replacement of the front yard hedge is required, the installation will comply fully with Municipal Code Chapter 447 or its successor bylaws. You know, I love the fact that always love the fact when residents come forward and spend money on greening their properties. But I do have to respect the argument that there might be a safety issue. When I look at one of these pictures, the hedges are there, but there's also a beautiful big tree on the property that might impede 32 Renown's ability to exit. So I'm trying to meet somewhere in the middle, and hopefully I can. You'll support the motion.
Any further speakers? Seeing none, Councillor DeChano's motion's on the screen. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, I'm going to go back to 28.3, draft plan and standard condominium application 2522, 2542, Keele Street, request for direct report. And I'm going to rule that Councillor DeGiorgio's motion is out of order. Councillor DeGiorgio, feel free to challenge the chair if you wish, but our solicitor said it's out of order. So could you turn your mic
Before I
on?
address the issue of order, so if I can just stand this down.
Stand it down? Okay. We'll hold it down. (2815) application for fence exemption 306A Kane Avenue. Are there any speakers on 306 Kane Avenue? 306 Kane Avenue? Seeing none? Questions of staff? Seeing none, Councillor DeGiorgio. 306, this is 15.
15 on Kane. Yeah, this is,
Councillor DeGiorgio, can I ask you, can we deal with 306A, 306B, and 306A all together, or no?
Absolutely, absolutely. They're all very similar.
So one sec, Councillor DeGiorgio, just one second. And 18? 11 George Brownlee Court. So we do with all four in your mind
Yeah,
together?
they're all in the same subdivision. I can deal with all four.
So just one sec, Councillor DeGiorgio. Are there any speakers on 306B Kane Avenue? Are there any speakers on 308 Kane Avenue? Are there any speakers on 11 George Brownlee Court? Seeing none. Questions of staff, Councillor DeGiorgio?
I don't have any questions, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
any questions of staff? No? Councillor DeGiorgio, floor is yours.
Do you want me to make motions individually, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, if you could, would be
In
great.
each case, I will be recommending that we grant the application for fence exemption, and that is to say adopt recommendation 2.
On all of them?
Yeah, on all of them. There's
Okay.
very, very minor elevations in property and surrounding property owners, and I don't think there's any real problems there.
Okay.
Okay?
So if we put, we'll put on number 15 first. On which one?
Oh, no. Okay.
Okay, so the motion's on the screen. This screen, oh, there's, okay, there's number 15, 306A Kane. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 306B Kane Avenue, number 16. Hang on. Is this 16?
Yep.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 2817, 308A Kane Avenue. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 2818, 11 George Brownlee Court. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 2819, application for fence exemption, 9 Norcrest Drive. Oh, we have a speaker, Laura Ballardin. Laura? Good afternoon, welcome. Thank you for your patience. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Laura Ballardin, and I'm the owner of the property at 10 Brief Road. My backyard is directly behind the property owner of 9 Norcrest Drive, who is seeking and requesting a fence exemption. I'm here today strongly opposing the exemption request. Granting the fence exemption, allowing the height of the fence to exceed the Toronto Municipal Code, will directly impact the value of my property. It's aesthetically unpleasant to look at, and it sets a precedence for neighboring properties which are planning to erect other fences. Early in July, the residents hired a contractor to erect a wooden board-on-board fence that does not comply with the height of a rear yard fence as outlined in section 447 2B of chapter 447 of the Toronto Municipal Code. The residents did not seek an exemption before beginning construction. When we noticed the fence was being constructed higher than what the bylaw permitted, we spoke to the residents and we were disrespected and dismissed with our concerns. I advised the residents that I would be contacting the city bylaw officer to inspect the construction of the fence. The bylaw officer attended at on approximately July 4th. A stop work order was issued. The only allowance at that time was to tie down the posts to avoid warping until further amendments were done. The residents blatantly disregarded the city order and continued to proceed with the construction and completed construction of the fence, by which the bylaw officer returned and a notice of violation was issued approximately on July 20th. The residents blatantly disregarded the city bylaw process. They did not stop construction to file a fence exemption at that time, but instead continued and completed construction higher than the permitted 2 meters. The fence now sits at 2.5 meters or more. There are no special circumstances for the need of a higher fence height. There's no pool in that backyard. They're all single-family dwellings in the surrounding area. Their desire for privacy should be satisfied by the 2-meter fence permission of the bylaw, which will comply with the bylaw. My privacy, along with the privacy of my neighbors, was all eliminated upon the erection of their new 2-story home, which overlooks the surrounding neighbors. Again, I strongly oppose this fence exemption. Aesthetically, it's unpleasant to look at. It directly impacts the value of my property at 10 Brief Road along with 11 Brief Road, and it sets a precedence for other neighbors to do the same thing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. If you can just hang on, please. I know Councillor Nunziata had a question for you.
Yes, I just have a question. So I'm looking at the picture, and you said that you live behind the property, right, where the fence is?
Yes, directly behind.
Yeah, so that tree with, that big tree with the tree house, is that yours?
Yes, it is.
So the tree house is yours?
It was there when I purchased the home, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have, I know Chair Grimes is coming back. I had a couple of questions for you as well to help me understand this. Just give the chair a second to come back. Councillor Campbell? Campbell.
Okay, all right.
Or over here, so the fence was built at their expense, or did you share in the expense of the fence?
No, there was a chain link property fence, which I was quite happy with. I had no interest in building a wood board-on-board fence, and I had no interest in sharing that cost.
One would sometimes think that a higher fence would afford you with more privacy than less.
I believe that the 2 meters is more than enough for privacy. They have a 2-story monster home that overlooks. I have no privacy whatsoever.
So I'm confused because you said that yours is, oh, I see. Yours is the property with the tree. Theirs is the one that we're seeing in the photograph.
Correct.
I see. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Hawley, the question.
Thank you. Are you aware if, sorry, let's back up for a second. How long have you been at 10 Brief Road?
I've been living at 11 Brief Road, which is directly next door, for over 15 years. I purchased 10 Brief Road, January of 2017.
And are you living at 10 Brief Road or 11 Brief Road?
I live at 11 Brief Road, and I have a single-family rented dwelling at 10 Brief Road.
Okay. Does any of the fence of the subject property overlap the backyard of 11 Brief Road?
No, but aesthetically I can see it.
Okay. Because I guess you're across the street then.
Right next door to 10 Brief Road. It's a court.
Okay. But it doesn't okay. Can you also describe to me the height variations? So I see that there's the little posts that extend past the top rail.
Correct.
Do you have any sense of what the height of the actual fence board is? Is that 2 meters or is it more?
Well, way more.
Way more, like,
It could be 2.5, beyond 2.5.
is the fence the same height across the entire back of 10 Brief Road? Or does it change in height? Is it taller on one side and shorter on the other?
There's a slight elevation towards the left-hand side.
Okay, thanks, that's very helpful.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Any further speakers to the item? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
State your name.
My name is Sid Catalano. I'm just representing the owners. You have a blurb that I sent to you to the committee earlier. This sort of gets a background. And I think we can actually clear up some concerns that you had of the previous deputant. Oh yeah, you can see it perfectly there. That shows the fence from the lady at 10 Brief Road looking onto our applicant at 9 Norcrest. I also have, I'm going to be brief, I also have a photo that addresses Councillor Holliday's notion of how this fence is. If you look at, that's the dividing fence between 8 and 10 Brief Road. That's 7 Norcrest, and that's the new one. So the new one has basically been built in line with both existing fences. There's just a line drawn, so it continued from number 7 Norcrest right across. And the other photo I want to show you is the fact that here's the photo, here's the, it's hard to see this. What you see is this is the picture showing from 9 Norcrest to 10 Brief, which shows an upward slope. So the elevation of 10 Brief is higher than the elevation of 9 Norcrest. So in essence, what you're doing is 10 Brief, and the land slopes down like this. That may be over-exaggerated to get the point. Here's the fence, and here's 9 Norcrest. So that's sort of what, if you're doing a cross section of what the two properties look like from 10 Brief to 9 Norcrest, there's a slope. So although the fence may be a little higher, as we mentioned in the notes, I think the idea is it's quite nice. It's all on their property, and I believe it's going to provide a privacy issue to both parties on here. And if there's any other questions you want, or comments you want to ask.
Deputy Mayor Holiday to question.
Thank you. Can you tell me, was there a committee of adjustment exemption given for 9 Norcrest during the construction? Are you aware?
Yes, there was.
Was there any opposition from the neighbors on that, or was it contentious?
I can't recall. You may want to, the ward councillor may know, but to my recollection, no.
Okay. Is there any issue with the fence between 10 and 11 Brief Road that you're aware of? Like, is it compliant with the bylaw 2 meters?
That I'm not sure. You may want to address the MLS stuff on that.
Okay, but if I get this right, the T intersection of the fence is at 9 Norcrest, 10 and 11 Brief Road.
And
the top
7
rails
Norcrest, correct.
and 7 Norcrest. The top rails all meet at that end of the property.
All meet at that.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
They all meet at that point, yes.
But the land must slope the other way. I'm going to take it.
Slope, yes.
Okay. Who built the fence?
It would
The
be a
fence in question.
contractor. It would be a private contractor.
A private so like somebody certified, a landscaper or something
I
like
believe
that?
so, yes.
So what about this business of being told by MLS not to stop and then continuing work?
Well, I've heard other criteria. I mean, it's a hearsay, he say, she say type thing. I've heard that MLS, when it went out there, they gave them some leeway to start the fence. Hold on, at that. My understanding is when MLS went out there, they gave them some leeway. They could start building that fence where that T intersection started.
Okay.
Now, the non-stop work order, I'm not sure when that was issued, but they were, I believe MLS was out there 2 or 3 times, but the initial one was when they commenced building the fence, they were allowed to take a plumb line from that T intersection and continue around the back of their property.
Okay. What's the name of the landscape company? Do you know? Fence builder?
Lito's Contracting.
Thank you.
Any, Councilor Giorgio, a question?
Yeah, can you just throw that last photograph back up? Yeah, my recollection when I visited the site and I spoke to the previous deputant, Laura, what's not evident here is if you were to proceed, I guess, east, is there not a sizable change in elevation on that property?
On the,
That is to say, east, well east of the tree, like, I mean, if, not there, the other way.
going this way.
On the property, coming east from the tree.
On the old fence.
Oh, that's not east, that's south.
Okay, that's what I said, going towards number 7 Northcrest.
No, not towards the old fence. I'm talking about going through the resident's property, going on the resident's property that was the previous deputant.
Yes.
You have something that shows that difference in elevation where they have a rear deck.
Yes, right here.
Yeah, but that's the thing, it's not very visible.
Would you like to pass it around?
Hey, yeah, it would be helpful to pass it around.
You'll see what the difference is.
Yeah, no, it's not overly helpful, it's okay. Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Any further deputants on the item? Seeing none, questions of staff?
I'll take one.
Questions of staff?
Wants to go first? Quick one.
Deputy Mayor Holiday, questions of staff?
The T intersection that was shown of the various properties at one side, what's that height? Is that 2 meters?
Through you, Mr. Chair. The height of that fence is approximately 2.5 meters. It does slope down. There have never been any prior complaints on those properties, so the issues were not addressed at that time.
So in your estimation, the heights of those adjacent properties are also taller than 2 meters?
So yes, the properties to the north and to the east, there is a significant slope from the rear of those properties, and it does step down. But the fence height at the rear of those properties is in excess of 2 meters.
Okay, that's helpful. And then the last is, were you satisfied with your interactions with the contractor that there was some respect of the direction given from MLS, or was there, let's say, disobedience, as was alleged by the first speaker?
So I actually conducted the site visit. I was very satisfied with the contractors, the work and the questions that they had asked. There was no stop order ever issued. They were just cautioned that the height had already exceeded and a notice of violation would subsequently follow.
Thank you.
Councilor Giorgio?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very briefly, Mr. Chairman, I did attend the site prior to the fence being constructed, and I spoke with both the previous deputant and the proponent who ended up building the fence and was subsequently given a stop work order. I just communicated to both parties that in fact someone could construct the fence and then ask for an exemption. So that's where we're at today. And pardon me?
Do you have a motion?
Yeah, my motion is to approve the fence as is, simply because from a cosmetic point of view and taking into consideration the interests of everyone in terms of privacy as it relates to the abutting property owners. It's a judgment call, and I'm saying I'm just going to allow the fence to remain as is.
Councilor George's motion's on the screen to grant the exemption. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Councilor Mamalidi, point of order. And before I do that, when you were outside, there was up in here saying nice things about you. I thought we'd like to hear
Really?
that. But
We got it on tape.
somebody was saying nice things about him when he was out of the room.
Tide is turning.
Yeah, that's what happened. Anyway, Councilor Mamalidi, point of order.
Everything's a circle in life.
That keeps going around and around.
Yeah.
Councilor Mamalidi. Point of order.
Mr. Chairman, I noticed that there's not much left on the agenda. I think we should finish the, agenda. I'll
Motion to
move,
complete the
I'll
agenda.
move that.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. I think there's about 5 items left. 2820, application for fence exemption 143, Renault Crescent. Speaker, Tony Andricetti. Good afternoon, sir. Welcome. Thank you for your patience.
Antonio Andretti.
Tony, just pull that down, that mic a little bit, if you don't mind, please. And you have 5 minutes, sir.
I'm here, I live at 145 Renault Crescent. I'm here for the fence. The fence is way too high. It should be built to the code, to the bylaw. One thing. The thing is unsafe fence. It's built with screws sticking out. This gentleman is a contractor. He's the one that built it, 143 Renault Crescent. If you look at the pictures, if you look at the two houses, you wouldn't think these are next door neighbors. I'll show you this one. I'm not sure this. You have that.
Well,
Yeah, if you look at his picture on his side.
Is the screen not working back there? No?
You do have that.
If you put it up there, Antonio. No? There we go. Okay.
That's his yard. Now, you're gonna look at my side. He made my side ugly. It doesn't look good at all. He's worrying about children. I got kids myself. I got little children's. And there's screws sticking out of the wood. If you look at this fence, it's totally unsafe. It blocks everything. The height, you can't, there's no light. And for safety, you know, the fence being at the 2 meters would be fine. We don't need a fence that's gonna be over. To me, it looks like this is all about me, not about your neighbors or what my side looks like. It's only what my side looks like, not his. Like, it's unfair, really. That's all I have to say, really.
Good afternoon, sir, and thank you for coming in. In full transparency, I have met with the applicant about this. I have not spoken with you. Have you reached out to our office regarding this?
Many times.
Many times?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll follow up with my staff on that then. So with this file here, it's the height of the fence that you're concerned about, correct?
The height of the fence is way too high and unsafe, a screw sticking out. He's a contractor. He's the one that built the fence.
I'm going to ask our friends at Municipal Licensing Standards about nails sticking out, because they would have inspected the fence.
Yeah, they've seen the screws sticking out.
You believe 20 centimeters is way too high?
Way too high. You don't need it that high, really. For privacy for kids in the backyard, you don't need that height, really, at all. That's uncalled for.
Okay. So I have questions. It has been put on public record what the neighbors' concerns are, and I think members of community council have seen this. So my first question is that in their letter to community council, they took down the old fence and put it up on their property line, where this whole dispute started. They moved it 3 feet in.
Could I interrupt for 1 second?
Yep.
Michael Ford, I was there from since 2003. He was saying that we stole this property. You know, then we did a survey, and it was that, I guess the old neighbors, they decided to do the survey on the property on, and they took the fence and put on. There was a chain link fence before on there, and he took the chain link fence down. And it should have never been taken down in the beginning.
So, sir, has the fence been put up on the property line, yes or no?
Now it's on the property
Yeah,
line,
okay,
yes.
Thank you. Moving into this, number 5 of, as I said, the neighbor's letter says, during when the fence was down, you put up sharp metal rods, chicken wire, and metal mesh along their property line.
We never did anything like that. It wasn't metal rods or metal
No?
Nothing
So
at all.
I have a picture here of that. Would you maybe like to see that?
Oh, I'd love to see that, yes.
No? Okay, so I will absolutely share that with you. Another question. As I said, this is all on public record. I don't like getting in the middle of a neighbor dispute, but I want to put the facts out on the table here. You've put cameras facing their
Not
house.
at all, sir. I had the police, they called the police many times over there. Never had cameras going to their side.
And the police came and changed the position of the camera. Is that correct? With the police incident file number here? Did they ever do that?
The camera was never facing their side. The
But
fence is
the
too high.
police-
How would it be facing their side?
Sir, but yes or no, did the police come and move the camera off facing their property? Did the police ever do that?
No, he told me to move the camera to make it straight.
So it was moved, and that was facing their bedroom or their bathroom.
No,
correct?
impossible. Impossible. It's impossible it was facing
Right,
their
but
bathroom.
so you did move the camera.
You know, we're talking about a fence here, Mr. Michael.
I'm just,
Michael Ford.
sir, I'm not here
Like
to
that is-
debate, sir.
Sir, he gets that. Sir, you had your opportunity to speak. He asked you questions. You have the opportunity to
I
answer.
hear debate. I am just asking the facts. I want clarification for myself because we have not spoken, right? That's all I'm asking here. So you said this stuff is true. I will show you the pictures with the metal wires. Have your neighbors, they've been living there for a year and a half, have they spoken with you and tried to accommodate their fence to your liking? Have they changed it in any way, shape, or form?
Not to my liking at all.
No, no.
Not at all, really. Do you see the boards are all put together?
Right, I have.
Our
been
side
out-
is the ugly side.
I have
Do
been.
you
out
see
there.
that? Do you notice that the woods at the bottom of the concrete is sticking out?
I have
Contractors.
seen it from their side. Sir, I wouldn't trespass on your property to look, but, okay, so, thank you. That's, yeah.
Any further questions? Councillor Campbell.
So, you don't like the look of the fence, that's the bottom line.
No, it's not that I don't like the look of the fence. I don't like the height of the fence.
Right.
And I don't like the fence that it's made to the
Yeah.
way they like
Well,
it.
you said, okay, so let's, the fact, I mean, to be straight, even if this thing was down by 20 centimeters, you still wouldn't like the fence.
No, if it was down by 20 centimeters, it would be much better.
Would you be happy if it was down by 20?
I would be happy if it was built to the.
No, I asked,
code.
would you be happy?
I would be happy if it was built to 2 meters.
Okay, because I get the feeling you just, because it looks ugly, and granted, this doesn't look so great from your side of the property. I think that's the big problem, not so much the height, right?
The way he built this fence doesn't look good at all, really. It
Right.
looks like you're going to a dungeon hole over there.
So, okay, but if he brought it down by 20 centimeters, if he just comes along with a chainsaw and takes this
Whatever he
much
has
off,
to do.
that's about 20 centimeters, right? If he takes that off, are you going to be happy then?
I would much happier too if he would take it off down and he'll fix up this.
I don't think that's going to happen. Because I mean, if
Like,
we,
how could you be neighbors and do a backyard, do a fence like this?
but if we say he's got to comply with the bylaw, you're still going to have issues with the fence.
No, the fence of it, make the fence down to what it's supposed to be, 2 meters is fine with me.
George, bring the video.
Okay, I get it. All right, thank you.
Councillor Mamalidi.
I'm just wondering, on your side, if he were to fix it up a little bit, would you be happy with that? If you were to come up and kind of fix up what you think might not work?
My wife fixed it up as much as she can, really, because now today it looks much different than what it does look.
So the answer
I
that
put a gate there, it's all done over there.
the
That's
answer to
not-
my question was, if he came and kind of fixed it up a little bit, would you be happy with that?
I'd be much happier, yes, if he would remove all his pieces of boards that he left inside there and screws that are sticking out. Like, come on, we're talking about children here, like.
All right, you answered the question. Now, when he built the fence, he had to come onto your side to build that side?
He would just go on my side and do what he had to do.
So, did you object to him coming to your
I never
side?
object him at all to come on my side.
You allowed him to build the fence?
Yes, I did, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Holly, question.
So you talked about screws sticking out. Did you have the bylaw officers over on your side to inspect that?
They seen that.
They've seen that?
Yes.
Can you tell me where the screws are sticking out?
They're sticking out all over the place. All along the fence line, you'll see all screws sticking out.
Why, are they too long? Is
They're
that what it
too
was?
long sticking up through boards. I took pictures today of them too.
Just
You
tell
want
me
to see
about
them
it.
on my phone?
No, I believe you. How much are they sticking out?
I would say about 3/4 of an inch.
3/4 of an inch. So it sounds like, if I got it right, when he screwed the boards on, he screwed through and sticking out the other side.
That's absolutely
And-
right.
and
It looks
you-
like
Is
that's what he
is
did.
it like 2 or 3? Is it 50? Is it like 1,000 screws?
To be honest with you, I never counted all the screws that it is, but I just find
More than
that's
100 or less than 100?
not neighborly.
I get it. More than 100 or less than 100?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions, thank you, sir, you can sit down. Any further deputants to this item?
He said his wife cleaned it up.
Seeing none, Councillor Ford.
Questions of staff, Mr. Chair?
Questions of staff, Councillor Ford.
Thank you. Thank you. So, through you, Mr. Chair, to MLS staff. So the neighbor has made a comment about screws sticking out when your officers went out. Did you see any of that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I was actually at the property probably about 2 months ago. At the time of my inspection, as well as the officers, I did not observe any screws sticking out or any other immediate health and safety concerns.
Right. So now I have a few more questions. So when this applicant put in their application at MLS to have this fence exemption, we don't have any of this in front of us today, but they had their own photos that were submitted. Do you have that in the document? In the document?
Give me one moment, Councillor.
Thank you.
I do have a package here of photographs that were submitted as part of the application.
Now, and this is just clarification for myself, when MLS receives that in an application, that doesn't come forward in the report. That just stays with MLS.
That's correct. In some cases, we will utilize the information provided to us by the applicant. In most cases, it's based off of the evidence that the officer has gathered at the time of inspection at the property.
In this application that you received, have you seen 5 other supporting letters from the immediate community saying that they are okay with this?
Yes, Councillor, through you, Mr. Chair. There was supporting letters. I would estimate it was approximately 3 to 5.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, that's good. Thank you very much.
Any further questions of staff?
Yeah, I just have one question. So in attachment 3, that picture that's in our binder, that's not a recent picture, or is it?
Through you, Mr. Chair. That picture is relatively recent. The applicant the owner at this property has made multiple adjustments throughout the course of the fence construction to try and bring it down and make variance. But I would say that is pretty close to its current state.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions of staff, Councillor Ford, speak.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. I am going to be moving the staff alternate recommendations to grant the exemption. I think it's very important to balance both sides of this. As the neighbor has said that he did try to reach out to my office on record, I get back to all my constituents and ask my staff to look into it. I don't have record of that, but sir, I'd be happy to meet with you right after this. On the application itself, I don't think this is a massive fence. I think this community council has approved many offenses well above 20 centimeters above the bylaw. I think this is fair. In my conversations with the applicant, and they do have a young family. They just recently moved into this house. I was out there, I visited them. They walked me through all kind of the neighbor dispute that's happening here, which I really don't want to get into. It just in general bothers me when it comes forward to us as that. Either way, on the merit, I think it's okay to move forward. I'll endorse this. We have 5 other members of the community who have submitted letters. They do not oppose this. Sir, I'd like to come out and look at these nails you're talking about. And from what I have gathered from the applicant, they would be more than happy to fix that right away. I know that they made multiple adjustments to the fence to try and work with their neighbor. We've heard that from MLS staff. And the photos they have shown is them doing work on their house. And they just moved in. I think we need to give them a little bit of credit here, or give them some time to get stuff in order. And due to what the applicant has put out in their letter, I fully support all of these concerns. And I think a little bit of privacy, I think is warranted. But at 2.2 meters, I don't think this is a really big issue. I do have photos here. It's come to my attention that they weren't circulated to the members of community council. There are wires sticking up, metal rods. If any members of community council like to see it, I can actually pass them down. I think there is another. So that's kind of what we have. And I think I'm okay to move forward with this. And I'm happy to work with the neighbor if he has concerns.
Councillor Ford, would you consider it friendly to just add a line at the end just to remove any dangerous screws that may be protruding?
Absolutely, yeah, most definitely.
So if you can just add that to his motion, I don't need to move that. That way we can save you a step, screws or nails, any dangerous, okay?
Yep.
Any further speakers? Seeing none, Councillor Ford's motion is on the screen to grant the exemption. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Can we keep a copy of that picture?
One, application fence exemption, 9 Rex Gate. Any speakers on 9 Rex Gate? Rex Gate, any speakers? Seeing none. Questions of staff? Seeing none. Councillor Ford, 21.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be very brief on this as well. I've been out, I have spoken with the community. There's no opposition here. I believe this one is, I think, 2.26 meters once I get all in front of me here. As I said, I was out, visited the property. No issue with this. I'm comfortable to move staff ultimate recommendations.
Councillor Ford's moving the staff ultimate recommendations to grant the exemption. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Traffic control signals, North Queen Street and Vanscoe Road. We have a speaker, Marissa Keating. Good afternoon, Marissa. Welcome. You have 5 minutes. Thanks for your patience.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of Community Council. My name is Marissa Keating of Davies Howe LLP, and we are counsel to North Star Corporation, the owner of 6 Vanscoe Road in Etobicoke. As you may know, our client has been in discussions with Councillor DeChana's office for several months regarding the need for traffic signalization at the corner of Vanscoe Road and North Queen. These concerns were initially raised in May of last year in the context of a minor variance application for a diamond storage facility at 1460 the Queensway, which is directly across the street from our client's property. On behalf of our client, we raised concerns before the Committee of Adjustment that the new self-storage facility would increase the traffic on Vanscoe Road, and we requested that Transportation Services assess the need for a traffic light at this intersection. At the same time, we also raised concerns regarding the ongoing presence of trailer trucks parked right up into the city's boulevard at 34 Vanscoe Road. And if you're familiar with the site, you'll know that the trailer trucks are encroaching so far into the city's boulevard that any motorist traveling on Vanscoe Road cannot see oncoming eastbound traffic on North Queen. The December 6th transportation report acknowledges this situation, and quoting the report, it states motorists must encroach beyond the stop bar to achieve adequate visibility. However, this key fact fails to work its way into the staff's analysis regarding warrant number 3. As we indicated in our letter, we're of the view that traffic lights installed at this intersection would allow all motorists to safely negotiate that intersection, and no one would have to encroach beyond the stop bar. As this situation has been ongoing with no enforcement, we believe that this is the best approach to keep motorists and pedestrians in the community safe. We should note that we have been in discussions with Hydro One, the owner of 34 Vanscoe Road, who have in turn been in discussions with their tenant. They have contacted municipal bylaw enforcement, and the situation has not improved. We strongly urge you to consider today that a traffic light installed here can proactively prevent a serious collision from occurring at this intersection. On this basis, we respectfully request the Community Council not adopt the recommendations of Transportation Services. As an alternative, we would ask that traffic conditions be reassessed once Diamond Storage has opened its doors. As you know, the warrants can be met with 80% compliance in Warrant 1 and Warrant 2. We're of the view that the current results for Warrant number 1, which now sit at about 47%, are likely to increase to 80% once Diamond Storage opens its facility. Thus, should Community Council agree with staff's recommendations, we request that the traffic conditions be reassessed once Diamond Storage opens its facility and has been in operation for at least 3 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions to Deputy Mayor Holliday?
Thank you. Can you just describe Diamond Storage? Is it like storage of diamonds, or that's the company name?
Sorry, Councillor, it's the company name, DYMON.
Thank you. So it's a self-storage facility.
That's correct.
All right. And how did you get to the conclusion that it would go from 40% to 80% based on the addition of Diamond Storage?
We anticipate that, sir, but we don't have any figures at this moment. That's why we'd ask Transportation Services to reassess the need for a light after they've been open.
But you went from 40 to 80. Did you just double it? Just like, is there any sort of approach or rationale that?
Well, Diamond Storage has facilities across the province, and they normally have a retail component. While the retail component wasn't approved at the Committee of Adjustment, we anticipate that they will apply for that retail component in the coming months.
Okay. So the other, back to the corner there, your concern is the sight line. Are there any other reasons that a traffic light would be required there other than the sight line issue?
Well, the sightline issue, and we anticipate additional traffic from the Diamond Storage facility.
Right.
Those are our 2 main points.
But it's 80%, maybe. So other than maybe there's going to be more traffic, is there any other reason for having it there besides the sight line?
Other than the sightline at this point in time, no.
Okay. So is it the position of your client that the taxpayer should pay for a light because of someone's perhaps bylaw issue?
Well, although it's a bylaw enforcement issue, I mean, it's still an issue.
Right.
We haven't been able to come to any solution regarding that.
And what leads you to believe it's a bylaw issue? Like, has there been and I don't know, has there been an adjudication on that? Has someone figured out that there's a problem with bylaw compliance?
Well, bylaw enforcement has been contacted on several occasions, and the situation hasn't changed.
Okay, but that doesn't say that there's a bylaw issue. That just says bylaw enforcement's been contacted. I'm trying to, if there's more information, it's helpful.
Bylaw enforcement issue.
So we don't know if there's an issue. Bylaw's being contacted.
Bylaw enforcement has been contacted. That's correct.
Okay.
So that's my understanding.
All right, thanks.
Councillor Nunziata had a question.
Yeah, so you're representing Diamond Storage, right?
No, we're counsel to North Star Corporation. They're across the street from the proposed Diamond Storage facility.
So who are you then? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
North Star Corporation. Our client owns 6 Vanscoe Road.
Oh, okay. And you're advocating for the light.
That's correct.
Right. So would your client be willing to pay for the light?
I don't have instructions on that.
But sometimes there are businesses that, corporations that don't meet the warrants for a traffic light, but the owner pays for it.
Unfortunately, I don't have instructions on that point.
Okay, maybe you could ask your client.
Okay, any further questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further speakers to the item? Seeing none, questions of staff, Councillor DeChano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I have questions for both MLS and Transportation Services. How are you?
Not too bad.
Good. The trucks that are parked, the trailer trucks that are parked at 34 Vansco, have we looked into, has MLS gone out and seen if they are parking on any element of the right-of-way, or if they're completely on private property?
They are currently completely on private property.
Okay. So, next question is the stop bar that's painted on the street on Vansco. Is there a regulation that prohibits us from moving that stop bar another 4 feet closer to North Queen?
It's generally, we do set it back a certain distance, for safety purpose, so that,
Yep.
Motorists don't run right into the intersection if they can't stop in time. But we do, motorists are allowed to encroach gradually to improve their sight line before they proceed into the intersection.
Right, so there's no moving the stop bar?
No.
Okay, those are all my questions, thank you.
Any further questions of staff?
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Holday.
In your review of this, have you determined any safety issues?
We've noticed no safety issues whatsoever, no collisions or of any kind. It's generally safe. It's been safe thus far.
Are there any other examples of intersections? I think the answer is yes, but if you can answer it. Are there any other examples of intersections where a motorist is required to stop at the stop bar and then creep their vehicle forward to make sure they've got a full line of sight?
I'm sure there have been. I know on occasions I've done that as well. I've had to actually creep into an intersection to.
It's okay. I mean, I did it this morning on the way here, but.
There you go.
Okay. Have there been any accidents at that corner?
No.
That we know of. Okay. That's great. Thank you.
Any further questions of staff? Seeing none, thank you. Councillor DeChano, speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank the Speaker, Marissa, for coming out to illustrate their concerns. I know that we've been looking at this issue for quite a bit of time. I've driven it several times. And given that the stops or the stoplight does not meet warrants, it's from my experience, it's next to impossible to get my council colleagues to support that. But I'm also, as I've gone through that road to experience the concerns that some of the business owners have, when I stop at the stop bar, there is a truck that's parked that's in my way. But when I creep up, there is still a lot of room because of that right-of-way being so wide that I can creep up considerably, and the transport trucks are no longer in my view, and I've basically got a clear sight line of North Queen. If any of the applicants want to pay for a stoplight at this intersection, I would be more than willing to look at this issue again anytime. In the meantime, in the absence of that, knowing what our capital budgets are and the fact that we do not meet the warrants, I'm asking that we approve staff recommendations.
Any further speakers to the item? Councillor DeChano is moving the staff recommendations. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 28.5, preliminary report 2370 Finch Avenue West official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. We have a speaker, Kevin Bichard. Good afternoon, sir. Welcome, and thank you for your patience. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of council. There was some miscommunication. My staff booked me for this deputation, and my intention was not to proceed, is why I didn't respond to you earlier today or proceed with the deputation. While I'm here, I can say that we support the staff recommendations and request that they be approved. Thank you.
Greatest deputation of all day. Councillor Mammoliti.
I forgot my stamp at home.
Councillor Mammoliti, questions of staff?
No.
Councillor Mammoliti to speak.
I moved the staff recommendation.
Councillor Mammoliti move the staff recommendations. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 28.29. Councillor Campbell, you held the item. 28.29, and that is
traffic concerns.
Traffic concerns, Richview Gardens.
So I have, yes, I have a motion. I don't know if you want to ask the questions of staff.
Questions of staff? No. Councillor Campbell, the floor is yours.
So I have two motions. And this is concerns that were brought to me from a number of residents in the Richmond Gardens area. The Richmond Art Gardens area is north of Eglington, between Kipling and Islington, and it has been experiencing an increase in traffic flow from the development on Eglinton, also from the construction on Eglinton, and people trying to cut their way through the neighborhood. So I have had a very persistent group of residents who wanted to see some form of traffic calming. And although Wincott, they did not want to see traffic calming in the form of speed humps or chicanes, and they did the petition that I presented earlier today with 66 names on it, asking for not 1, 2, but 3 stop signs. So my thanks go to Kevin Atkins and Mark Hargo for doing the study. It's been a long time in progress. We put together even a traffic working group to look at it. And of the 4 sites, spots that were studied, I'm asking for and recommending 2 stop signs that do not, albeit meet the warrants, to be erected. In the case of one of them, it clearly, in case of Wincott and Strathy, I'll be as brief as I can. The traffic, the study period average is 504 cars. It clearly exceeds the warrant for the total approach vehicle volume. In one case, it meets the splits volume, and that's the morning rush hour when there's a lot of cars coming off of Eglinton. The overall split average is 77-23 between Strathy and Wincott, and Strathy is also at the intersection where there is a pool and a tennis court and entrance to a local park. So I think that is a reasonably good placement. There will slow cars coming down a hill and proceeding north on Wincott. The other location is one that actually came to my attention during the 2010 election when I was on a street called Hartsdale, and a number of residents approached me as I was knocking on doors saying that cars come down there quite speedily. There's a turn in the curve. There had been accidents there, according to the residents. They were concerned about safety of pedestrians. And so there's already a one-way stop at Holgate and Hartsdale, and this would make it a 3-way stop. So there's the 2 recommendations there, motions from me, Mr. Chair.
So to be clear, you're going against the staff recommendations?
In this case.
Oh, in this case?
In this case.
Oh, okay, I got you.
One is very.
No, I got you.
The one is very close.
Francis?
The one is very
He's
close
going
to being
against
the
staff
one.
recommendations. You see that? Yeah. Okay, so Councillor Campbell's going against the staff recommendations. His motions are on the screen.
I'm going to have this recorded, so
Yeah,
this way
have
in the
this recorded.
future, I can.
Okay, so the motions are on the screen. All in favor? Recorded vote. Councillor DeGiorgio, Councillor Doucette, Councillor Palacio, Councillor Nanzetta, Councillor Grimes, Councillor Mammoliti, Councillor Campbell. Opposed? Councillor Holiday and Councillor Ford. That carries.
Thank you, councillors.
Sorry, does this go to council where council can kill it? No, none of that, right? No, okay.
Draft plan of substandard condominium application 2522, 2542 Keele Street, request for direction report. I'm going to ask Rob to make a comment. I haven't got a chance to read that, so I'll ask our solicitor to make a comment if it's in order.
Mr. Chair, through you, the motion is not out of order, but I've reviewed it with planning and staff are recommending, are opposed to any of these conditions, and we can be asked questions about it, but we don't support any of these changes.
And that's fine. They can do that in their report. I just want to make sure it goes to the April 24th council meeting.
Okay, so,
Can we add that in, Brad? Excuse me, that the report come to the April 24th council meeting?
So just, we've done reports on the report to request to let Mr. Planner speak to it, Mr. Cresswell. We've done reports on these things numerous times, and again, that report that's listed in C won't have any impact on the condominium of approval. It all has to do with the zoning bylaw, which is in full force and effect for more than 2 years now. So
that's
so I'm
fine.
going to ask Mr. Cresswell to make a comment. What's the ramification? I think I heard strongly opposed, staff are opposed to this.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would agree with Rob. Again, walking through them, recommendation A, that we delete recommendation 1B, that's a standard recommendation to provide flexibility so we don't actually have to come back to council and seek if there's a minor amendment. It's providing flexibility to staff. Obviously, that's council's call, but I would recommend that. Recommendation 2, that any further revisions must be approved by Etobicoke or York Community Council. Again, that's council's purview should you wish to do that, but typically speaking, these kinds of things come back to staff if there are minor revisions, but again, that's council's purview. Recommendation C is a bit more problematic. As Mr. Robinson has said, we've already reported on these items through council any number of times, and it's basically repeating what we have said to council. But should council wish to do that, I would ask for some clarification, please, on C3, seeking a report outlining that the board approval provides for the needs of the local community and the needs for the new building residents in conformity with official plan policies. Quite frankly, I don't understand what that means. If council wishes to direct us to do that, sorry, if community council wishes to direct us to do that, I would ask the councillor to clarify what he means by that comment.
And Mr. Chair, just one thing, Mr. Cresswell, in terms of revisions to the plans, I think community council needs to remember that the plans reflect a building that's already built. They're as-built drawings showing a condominium building that's been built. So the plans, condominium plans aren't going to change. You know, we're wrapping conditions around those, but the plans aren't going to change. The building is built and occupied, so the building will not change.
Councilor Mammoliti, point of order.
Can I ask the local councillor a question?
Sure.
Well, you did move a motion. I guess, what is it that you mean by C3?
A couple of things. First of all, it is a complex issue, and therefore it's very difficult for me in this forum to communicate some of the things that I want to communicate. Official plan policies, first of all, dictate that any conversation with respect to Section 37 on any zoning amendment application has to involve the local councillor, staff, and the applicant.
All right, so,
Now,
so you want clarification on how a development gets approved, recommended, and approved without that dialogue?
Without that dialogue, correct. And on the basis of a recommendation that says that dialogue will take place, but it will be only between the applicant and the city.
So
that's in accordance with the Planning Act itself. It's not in accordance with official plan policies. It's in accordance with the Section 37 of the Planning Act.
So you, during this process, were never asked about Section 37 and whether it applies and whether you should have
Section 37 was not in the report that came before council. The number, which is in any application, was not on the application that went to council. The number that is negotiated did not appear on this particular application.
Okay, so so the community, in your opinion, the community needs to know why you weren't included.
All those kinds of things.
Okay, so I got questions of staff. So now you've heard the answer to the question with respect to 3. Why is it that the local councillor wasn't asked to cooperate with any discussions pertaining to any of the community benefits, if that's the case? Is that the case?
Through the chair, the request for direction report that came before council, where's the date here? It was the report dated July 9th, 2013. It was a report prepared for the August 2013 hearing. In the recommendations that we had at that time, one of the recommendations was that City Council authorize the city solicitor together with city planning staff and any other appropriate staff to advise the OMB of the above council position, which is just in terms of the position we were recommending for the OMB. And then also that the board withhold its order on the zoning bylaw amendment application appeal until it's been advised by the city solicitor that the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is in a form satisfactory to the city and that the Section 37 agreement required in recommendation 1 above has been entered into and registered on title. So we had asked that...
Did you talk to the local councillor as it was going through about the Section 37?
Through the chair, I wasn't the
So
staff
did
person
somebody
at the
from
time.
staff?
I understand that staff had discussions,
So
but I wasn't here at that
who
point
had
in
that
time.
discussion with the local councillor?
Through the chair, that would have been the planner on the file of the day.
And who would that have been?
That would have been Phil Carvalino, who was the planner on the file of the day. It also has to be remembered that at the end, if I can recall correctly, we're going back into 4 years of history, and I can get this number specifically, but I believe the actual building itself came below the 10,000 square meter threshold for section 37.
Okay, so did it qualify for section 37?
Under the city's current, the official plan was in time of the day. The answer is no, but we flagged it as a potential issue.
And who
to
negotiated
resolve.
that? Who negotiated it with the developer?
Again, Counselor, one more time. The building did not qualify for section 37 under this city's official plan. We flagged it as a potential issue to try to resolve. That report got sent back here to community council, and then the board hearing happened before that report was resolved at community council. There's a decision of the municipal board which says very clearly no section 37 will be attached to this development.
Okay, so no section 37 was attached to the development?
That's correct. Through the
And it
board.
wasn't negotiated at the board?
Well, the issue was, Counselor, when that report that was written, it went to city council. City council directed that report back to community council.
Okay.
Then there was a board hearing because it happened over the summer. There was a board hearing that happened on that file.
Okay.
And so.
Okay, so leading up to the appeal to the board, and as this thing was going through the process, did anyone talk to the community about potential community benefits?
Again, through.
Let's forget about the board for a second. Did anybody say, hey, we got to get the councillor involved here on behalf of the community to talk about community benefits?
Again, I will have to go back and check, but my understanding, going back through 4 years of history in my head on this, Counselor, is that the building did not qualify. Its size was just below the threshold that would have qualified for.
And that's why you didn't talk. So do you get number 3 now? Do you get why he's asking it?
I understand it, but the answer to C3 is that the board order specifically says there will be no section 37
But
that
he's
attaches
asking
itself.
for an explanation in writing, so it goes down as a part of the package here, so that he can go into the community and say, this is what their explanation is. Do you get that part of it?
I do.
Okay. And that is a part that we play in, right, as local councillors, to represent communities?
Yes, of course.
And documents and minutes and all of that stuff reflect all of that, right?
I'm not sure what you mean by documents and minutes.
Well,
but
the
it's
community has
direction.
questions, so sometimes you have to produce the motions and everything that comes through an application.
That's correct.
So given that you've objected to this publicly now, do you understand why the councillor wants it in writing?
I don't understand the councillor's motivation, but I understand what he wants.
I think he just described the motivation to you. But you understand why he wants it in writing? Both of you, right?
There are 2 items that are on the next council agenda already deferred from this site. We have written between us 20 reports on any numerous variations of these issues.
I'm sorry, speak into the mic, please.
I said there's almost 20, there's at least 15 reports on variations of these very same questions
I've been
that have gone through council, and there's 2 of them that are deferred.
I know.
So
I've been actually trying to follow Councillor DeGiorgio's,
Okay,
and I'm actually quite sympathetic to Councillor DeGiorgio's argument, because all along, all he's been asking for is for an explanation as to why there hasn't been dialogue in the community.
staff has provided that answer on numerous occasions, sir.
In writing?
Reports, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Councillor,
I think
point of order.
if I heard the response to Councillor Mamalides' questions, there seems to be some consensus. I heard the Director of Planning basically say that in their final report, they basically believed that the size of the building being applied for was under the 10,000 square meter threshold and therefore didn't qualify for Section 37. And that's fine. I went to the board and the board approved essentially a building less than 10,000 square meters and no Section 37 benefits. And I had no problem with that. Consensus was, I had no problem. Go ahead and build it. They didn't build it. And I'm looking to, why didn't they build? They got all their approvals. And the answer is they were not happy with less than 10,000 square meters. And Mr.
Okay, so Councilor George, that's not a point of order, that's a question of staff, so you want to do that
So
through
my
questions of
question of
staff?
staff is-
Okay, so
my
questions
question
of
of
staff,
staff
Councilor Giorgio.
If staff believed that the application was applying for less than 10,000 square meters and therefore did not require Section 37, why did they support an application in excess of 10,000 square meters? Why is the building 11,200 square meters? Why did they write a report saying we support what the guy is asking for, which is 11,200? That's what the final report said.
Okay, Councilor
Yes, it does.
We have questions of
They were
staff.
prepared to-
Councilor Giorgio, and questions of staff, so is that a question to?
My question of staff is simply this, just to get clarification. If the building was subject to Section 37, did the recommendation of planning staff say, let us negotiate the Section 37 benefit that the community is entitled to on behalf of the community and the applicant? Let us negotiate with the applicant. Let us not involve, under Section 37, you don't have to involve the community. Under official plan policies, you must. And so if you write a recommendation that says, we're not going to proceed with official plan policy where we engage the community, we're going to do it between the applicant and ourselves, and that requires an official plan amendment. And to be brutally honest, I went to the board and made the argument. Anyway, those are all things that need to be dealt with as evidence at the board. So I'll leave it at that for now. I'm asking for reports. And number one, the report already exists.
No, he's asking staff a question. I really would like to know why, after it increased in size, why staff didn't recommend a community benefit package. Why did they recommend this to the board without a community benefit package?
So through the chair, the request for direction report does contain recommendations to council to let us negotiate Section 37. That was a recommendation that staff provided. We asked to be given that ability to negotiate Section 37 if required.
But not in
The report was referred back to staff. It came to community council, it went to city council, it was referred back to community council. So staff, then this happened in the June and July of 2013. Staff were required to be at the board on this application in August. So we did not have a request for direction report that gave us direction by the time August rolled around, because it came back to community council and that was at the September meeting. So we did not have our instructions from council to be able to do that. We were at the board and we were asked the question, and the board said staff doesn't have direction to negotiate Section 37, so that's not going to be dealt with at the board.
Mr. Chairman, to be fair, she was not here at the time.
Okay, Councilor Giorgio, we know that. So we're on questions of staff. So Councilor Brown, you still on questions of staff?
I get all of that. I don't understand why, in some cases, in the hallways of the OMB board, the OMB, the lawyers call us to say, what's your opinion? The chair has just asked us to adjourn. The chair has just, what is your opinion on this matter? And is there a resolution that the community can be happy with? Why didn't that happen in this particular case?
Mr. Chair, city staff, the city solicitor was not at that Ontario Municipal Board hearing. Mr. Carvalino was there under summons by the applicant. City staff basically were pleading with the council and the local councillor at the last council meeting before the August OMB hearing. So the July council meeting, last chance to get instructions. We said, we need instructions. We tabled a report and we said it was clear that if we didn't get instructions, the hearing was going ahead in August. Staff didn't have instructions to oppose this project or to support it. So city solicitor was not there. Mr. Carvalino was there under subpoena. He gave planning evidence under subpoena. So there were no discussions in the halls about Section 37. There was no representation by the city at that hearing because council did not give staff instructions at that hearing.
And our planners felt that there shouldn't be a phone call to the local councillor given what's going on in the board?
The councillor was under subpoena, so he is called to the stand and he's required to ask whatever questions are made of him.
I was under subpoena?
I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Phil Carvalino was under subpoena, and the local council was there at the hearing, but those were, yeah.
And nobody, no planner, nobody there representing the planning department said, hey, I should have a conversation with the councillor on this?
Through the chair, if I could just interject, whether they had the conversation or not, the board did not allow them to have that introduced as evidence. Okay. So whether they had the conversation with the applicant or the councillor, the board wasn't letting them put that forward as something that we could achieve because we had no instructions from council.
Okay, last question. Do you get why I'm supporting C3 right now? All this needs to be put down in writing, I think. Like all these questions that we've had should be put in writing so everybody understands what happened. And I think that's all the councillor's asking with respect to C3 anyway.
Okay, any further speakers?
Yes, I'll just speak. You already spoke.
I'm moving the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
But I
well,
thought you
I asked, I
spoke
just said, any further speakers?
Okay.
Well,
So,
I want to speak very briefly.
Okay, can I speak?
Let Councillor Giorgio speak first.
I want to speak very briefly, just to basically ask for your support of the motions as they are. Simply because it is a rather long drawn out, it certainly is not a straightforward application as the applicant would have you believe. And all the evidence at the OMB will verify that. And for example, on December 14th, 2015, this is 2 years after the original board hearing, and after the board hearing on July 22nd, 2015, after the board approved motion on July 22nd, 2015, a report was written by the building department and supported by the legal department saying the size of the building was limited to 10,000 square meters. That was in December of 2015. Shortly thereafter, construction began for an 11,200, and the building department issued the conditional permit. What they didn't have before them was a set of final plans that showed that the building was in excess of 10,000 square meters. When somebody goes to the building department, even if they ask for a conditional permit, they must first put in the final building permit plans. They must put before the building department plans that show that they're exceeding 10,000 square meters. I don't think that was done. They did not put in plans that showed they were exceeding 10,000 square meters. And the building department issued a conditional permit on that basis. I'll tell you when the final plans were submitted, after the building was built. And the final zoning bylaw that was approved after the building was built. And it was approved by the OMB on March 9th, 2017, after the building was built. That's why this has been dragged on. The final zoning bylaw was not approved until March 9th, 2017. And then, after March 9th, they applied for an unconditional building permit. And they were issued an unconditional building permit on March 17th, 2017, 2 weeks later. And I said, issue the bloody building. Not because I didn't want it, I thought it was being fair. I wanted people to be able to move in. I was getting calls that people were saying, look, why can't we move into the building? And I called Mr. Crawford, do whatever you have to do, issue the permit to allow them to move in. Did he issue an unconditional building permit or did he issue an occupancy permit? Now, if the building is limited to 10,000 square meters, it could be that this gentleman they're applying for a condominium registration less than 10,000 square meters. What leaves it up in the air is what happens to the ground floor? What happens when they want to try and occupy space that is beyond 10,000 square meters? How is the board going to deal with that? Because they didn't get a change of use permit. Maybe, I don't even want to ask Mr. Crawford the question. They had made an application under a conditional permit to convert the ground floor from residential use to commercial use. That requires a change of use permit. But that wasn't issued at the time. It was embedded in the conditional building permit. But those are all issues that need to be dealt with at the board and ultimately in law. So I'll leave that the way it is.
Just a point of order. I think No, there's been some questions on permits now, right? And look, you just can't rush things through when these things happen. You gotta flush them out, right? Like what happened with, I just
Okay,
like to
point of order,
ask
Councilman,
staff-
point of order.
I'd like to ask staff because we've already asked them questions and we're back into committee. So I'd like to go back.
No,
and-
we're on speaking, Councilman. We've gone through this.
We're not
so-
gonna find out the question to the
No,
building
we're
permit
on
stuff?
speakers now. Councilor Nunziata to
Yeah,
speak.
thank you. I'm going to move the staff recommendation, and I ask that Councillor DeGiorgio's motion C be dealt with separately. We have to move on with this. This has been going on for years.
Doesn't involve the
I'm getting calls, Councillor DeGiorgio.
just-
So, we have to move on and get this resolved. And on number C, I think that it's okay to vote on C. So that's why I'm asking for a separate vote. But I'll move the staff recommendation.
Any further speakers? Yes. Councilor Mamalidi.
So now I'm starting to understand why Councilor DeGiorgio has been so adamant about wanting to know more information. And I know there's been reports written on this, but I don't think they've been in depth with respect to what we've just learned today. And I think there's still an opportunity for any report to highlight all the questions and all the things and questions that Councilor DeGiorgio has in C3 right now, because I think that's what he's looking for. And that's why I'm going to support Councilor DeGiorgio. And I think if we're not supporting Councilor DeGiorgio on this, if it were your own community, you want to know the answers to the questions. And you know which answers I want to know? I want to know why at the board there wasn't any dialogue between the local councillor, because the local councillor is the community at that stage. So I'd like to know why, and I'd like this report to just let us know why there wasn't a discussion from planning staff with the local councillor, why there wasn't an opportunity to talk about all of this, and why at the 11th hour, at under 10,000 square feet, there was no Section 37, but it was only at the board where over 1,100 square feet were talked about, why there wasn't an attempt by planning staff to try to resolve the matter of Section 37 community benefit there. You don't need council approval on Section 37. The board can approve it. And lastly, I understand that the building department, Councilor DeGiorgio, is a little different than the planning department, that in order for an occupancy permit to have been issued, most likely, they would have had to at least get an unconditional permit of some sort in order for people to move in. You probably can't give an occupancy permit without a final permit for the building. So I would imagine that that's going to be talked about in C3, and I would hope that that is too, because I think that needs to be described as well. And I guess to the legal department, I don't know whether any reports have actually been in depth to this degree with respect to the answers to these questions. And if they were, Mr. Chairman, maybe staff can talk to me about that on the side. I don't recall reading the in-depth kind of stuff here in terms of what actually happened. So those are my comments.
Any further speakers? Okay, so we're going to vote on A and B together and then C separately, okay? Sorry? Okay, all in favor of A and B? Opposed? That carries. On C, all in favor? That carries. Clause amended, all in favor, opposed, carried.
So my motion to move the staff recommendation.
This is redundant. This passed. Councilor DeGiorgio, you have a motion to introduce and act to certain bills?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That the Etobicoke York Community Council pass and declare as bylaws Bills 173 to 182 and 218 to 219, prepared for the February 21st, 2018 meeting 28 of Community Council.
Shall these bills be passed and declared as bylaws? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councilor Doucette, you have a motion to introduce and act the confirming bill?
Council pass and declare as a bylaw a confirmatory bill to confirm the legislative proceedings of Etobicoke York Community Council acting under delegated authority at meeting number 28 on February 21st, 2018.
Shall these bills be passed and declared as a bylaw? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Motion adjourned. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.